Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee. We have 14 bill hearings this afternoon, and we will start with our prodigal member, Delegate Robin Lewis, HB 156, Transportation Electric Bicycle Rebate and Voucher Program. And I don't know if Joshua Feldmark's on a panel with you, but you can feel free to bring him up if he's here.
Mr. Feldmark, if he's here, but if he's not here, I'll get started. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed colleagues of my favorite committee, I'm Delegate Robin Lewis here on behalf of House Bill 156, the Electric Bicycle Rebate and Voucher Program Establishment Bill. I think you'll like this bill. This is a bill that makes it easier, and Mr. Feldmark, thanks. This is a bill that makes it easier for middle and low income folks in our state to purchase an electric bike. Why does that matter? Well, we've made a commitment as a state to reduce our fossil fuel emissions and reach climate targets. We've committed to reducing costs for households in Maryland. In fact, Governor Moore mentioned in his State of the State address that we've got to get serious about tackling household high household costs in an environment with inflation and wages that are not where we want them to be. The people of Maryland have asked us to do that for them. And owning an electric bike is a great way to help households reduce their household transportation costs. On average, the average American household can spend 15% or more of its monthly household income on transportation, and then owning an e-bike is a lot less expensive than owning a fossil fuel burning or even electric powered automobile. So this is an equity bill. This is a climate bill. It's a fairness bill because it'll allow more people the ability to move around. I'll mention that as well. In terms of equity, this is also a racial equity bill because, in fact, the fastest growing group of bicycle riders in the country are African American and Latino men, working class men of color, who are doing their best to commute to their jobs, and they can't necessarily afford an automobile and the cost of automobile ownership, and they need to get to work. So you probably are aware in this committee, you're probably pretty familiar with electric bikes. They look like regular bikes with pedals and handlebars, but what they have that's different is a small portable electric motor that can be removed and charged. But while it's in place on the bicycle, provides a little bit of a support, a little bit of an assist so that it's less onerous, less of a strain to pedal and move that bike, particularly when you're moving on hills. And for some of us who, are preparing to compete in the Senior Olympics, we might also appreciate the little assist of an electric bike because it lets us look fit and active, but not work so hard. This is a piece of legislation that helps more people have access, and I think we all agree that's a good thing. House Bill 156 has a very modest fiscal note. It includes a mandated appropriation of $100,000 in the first year in fiscal 25. And we asked in our innocence and optimism for, in the off years or in the future years, a slightly higher fiscal request, but we can negotiate that, of course. This bill puts Maryland in good company. We'll be following the lead of other places like Denver, Colorado, and even Austin, Texas, which has launched similar programs. Again, this is an equity bill that helps low and moderate income households have more transportation options. This helps us follow in the esteemed footsteps of cities like Philadelphia, where using rental e-bikes is actually an option for some, but African Americans and other people of color just don't really get to use those e-bikes. So owning one is a great option. Anyway, this bill will help with that. I ask for your favorable report and thank you for your consideration. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Josh Feldmark. I'm with Bike Maryland, and I have a confession to make, as long as you guys all promise not to tell my bike nerd friends. I have an e-bike, and I ride it quite a bit. Again, you cannot tell them. They will kick me out of the club. But when I had a job in Ellicott City and I lived in Columbia, about the 10-mile distance was just a little bit too far for me on my acoustic bike. And so once I bought an e-bike, it was a commute that, as long as the weather wasn't too horrendous, that it was actually a almost as fast commute as it would be in my car. And it was a much more pleasurable commute. And I think, sort of most importantly for the world, it was significantly less carbon emissions. And so even if there were not the equity piece of it, I think there is a very good justification for this program. When you put in this equity piece, I think it's just an absolutely brilliant program, because what an e-bike will do will expand the reach of where job opportunities exist. And for folks who cannot afford a car or even a reliable car, an e-bike actually builds that circle where they can actually reliably get to work with this e-bike. And I am living proof that it makes individuals who are, and I'm allowed to say this, not in particularly great shape. It makes it so it is entirely possible to get much further than you would go on a regular bike. So with that, I urge a favorable report.
Thank you. Just like when Bob Dylan went electric. Delegate Stewart.
Dating yourself, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming. Just two quick questions for the sponsor. First, Delegate Lewis, is it true that Maryland provides a credit right now for the purchase of electric vehicles?
Yes, it's true. Thank you for the question.
Is it true that e-bikes produce roughly 9% of the carbon of an electric vehicle?
Yes, that's true as well. Thank you, sir.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you. So glad to see my Baltimore City colleague in the committee. I do have a question, and it's just an assumption, I guess, on your part, but how many people do we assume will apply for this credit and actually utilize a e-bike?
That's an excellent question. One, we weren't really able to get a handle on during the bill drafting process. I'm not aware of any reliable data set that describes the characteristics of the person eligible for this. But one way we might get a handle on it, get closer to it, is to think about Medicaid enrollment in our state, just to get a handle on the number of people of a certain income range. And if I'm not mistaken, out of Maryland's 6 million or so residents, I think about 1 million are Medicaid beneficiaries. So there might be 1 million people who might be eligible. And of those, how many live in a place where they might have access to bike facilities? You know, if you're on a farm in Dorchester County, probably not really a bike lane near you, wouldn't be relevant for you. But if you live in Central Maryland, where there is a pretty decent ecosystem with bike facilities, might be more likely. So then you look at the population. So we're thinking roughly, I don't know, I'll tell you the truth. If 10 people in our state benefit from the passage of this legislation, I consider it a victory and an example of Maryland stepping up, being bold and creative to solve our climate challenge, our economic development challenge, our racial equity, social justice challenges, and overall being a more fun place to live.
Can I follow up with one question? One follow-up question. I just wanted to go over again, per the fiscal note, the requirements. Are they or requirements or and? And so, for instance, I could be I don't know, I could be maybe low income per se, but not necessarily on SNAP, but I may have Medicaid. So is it one of them, or it has to be a combination of all of the certain services that one has to be eligible for?
I appreciate the question. I'm agnostic on that and willing to think through what might be more feasible or more beneficial in the early years of this program. We modeled that provision on legislation that the General Assembly passed. I believe, if I recall, it was one of Delegate Lord Charkoudian's bills to expand access to something really good on the basis of Medicaid enrollment.
Right.
And forgive me, I can't recall off the top of my head at the moment. We're just trying to, I remember what it was. It was the check the box bill where we allow tax filers
Right.
to look at their income tax form and check a box that gives them access to guidance on health insurance enrollment. And we know that people who are eligible for SNAP and Medicaid are more likely to be in the income
Okay.
frame. So that was the aim
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, I'm just being cautious in that I could be eligible for Medicaid, but not necessarily SNAP, but it could mean I'm still in the same position. I'm just not getting SNAP. So I'm just wanting to figure out who can apply, and is it an and or one of those? So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you. Delegate Lewis, just a couple quick questions. And sort of ties in with Delegate Boyce. And I'm curious as when it says falls below the income threshold determined by the department. So can you give me roughly a number there? Because it's kind of open.
On the number of potentially eligible people?
No, the income.
Oh, well, the income eligibility for Medicaid is defined, and I think I would trust the Google machine more than I would trust myself at this point. But basically, it's some percentage of the federal poverty level. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's not a lot. I do know that as I recall, the federal poverty level for a household with 4 people in it is about between $40,000 and $50,000. But please don't quote me. I think we'd have to look that up, and I'd be happy to do that or ask for help with that.
I'm just curious if you had a rough number on that.
I once did in my 2 brain cells that I had left, but I just can't recall. But we're talking about some percentage of the federal poverty level. And if you're eligible for Medicaid, you obviously need support.
Okay. And my second question, it says the value of rebate or voucher may not exceed for electric bicycle $2,000. What basically that's a voucher for the whole cost, basically, right?
Well, that's a good question. Thank you, Delegate. You can actually find an electric bike on some website, which I won't name, for a few $100s, but that's probably a bike that won't last very long and might even be dangerous. There's lots of evidence that cheap electric bikes have batteries that blow up or catch on fire. Those aren't safe and they aren't good, and you don't necessarily want to buy one of those. A good electric bike might cost somewhere in the range of $1,000 and up. So we wanted to give people a little bit of an assist, just like the e-bike gives you an assist. We realized that our fiscal picture wouldn't allow the state to provide the full cost of a top of the line electric bike for everyone who might qualify under this bill. So we'd give them a little assist to help them close that expense gap. Whatever the expense of a decent electric bike, it's still cheaper than buying a car and maintaining car ownership. And in this committee, is it possible for panelists to add?
We'll get it in the subcommittee. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question.
Okay, I do not see any further questions, so thank you both for being with us. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 156. We will now turn to HB 176. Delegate Foley, vehicle towing or removal, ensure of record electronic notification. And if you have your panel, feel free to bring them on up.
Before I get started, Mr. Chair, I just want to correct the record that if there was any impression that the Senior Olympics allows electric bikes, the answer would be no. We compete on acoustic bikes only. Anyway, thank you very much. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the wonderful Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Linda Foley presenting HB 176, Vehicle Towing or Removal, Insurer of Record Electronic Notification. So it would not be a legislative session in ENT if I did not bring a towing bill. So this is this year's towing bill. HB 176 is the third in a series of bills that give towing companies and their customers the option to receive required notices by electronic delivery. This bill allows a towing company to notify the insurer of record about the towing or removal of a vehicle from a parking lot electronically if the electronic notification is agreed to by the insurer. So both parties have to agree. Two previously adopted bills by this committee and then put into law allow a tower or a police department to notify a secured party or lien holder electronically when a vehicle is towed from a parking lot if the electronic notification is agreed to by the parties. And this has significantly streamlined the process for those entities using it and allows matters to be resolved more quickly when the vehicle is not claimed. We hope that this legislation will provide some similar efficiencies there. So HB 176 is establishing the same process for the notification of an insurer of record when the vehicle is towed from the parking lot. Currently, just for your information, a towing company is required to notify the insurer of record by certified mail, return receipt requested, and first-class mail within 7 days. The process necessary in order to provide proper notification to all parties for reclamation of the vehicle, that's the process for reclamation. Should the owner or secured party or insurance company not claim the vehicle, the owner or secured party or insurance company is then agreeing to relinquish any rights to the vehicle, which would allow the towing company to seek a law enforcement agency to transfer the license and dismantle or recycler. So HB 176 streamlines all of that and the notification process and aligns the electronic notification process with that of secured parties and lien holders. This is a very simple bill that makes sense and benefits all parties involved in these transactions. And so therefore I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Andrea Mansfield with Manus Canning and Associates representing the Towing and Recovery Professionals Association. And actually, I don't think I could add anything more to what our sponsor has already said, but really just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support the last 2 years and really appreciate our towing champion here, Delegate Foley. There's a favorable report. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and committee, Delegate Foley, thank you. I agree with everything they've said. And this past year, due to this committee getting it passed through, there's been a lot of consumer savings of money along with notification being done. I happen to bring this with me. It's a letter that I mailed to MAFE from Baltimore to Annapolis, and it's stamped by the post office January 26th of 2023. It's then also stamped returned to me August 23rd. Storage is daily. So by them receiving this earlier, it would have saved a lot of money. This vehicle ended up being scrapped, but luckily nobody wanted it anyway. But this is just one sample of what we've been getting. So this would definitely be great for the consumer as well as the insurance industry for all. Thank you, and I hope you find it favorable. And thank you, Delegate Foley, for the great work you've been doing in the towing industry.
Thank you. Any questions for Delegate Foley or her panel? I do not see any. That concludes the bill here. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a quick question. I've discovered this issue recently in Baltimore County with abandoned vehicles. So this would only be in parking lots, right? Private parking lots. We've got issues with them, on roadways and things like that. It wouldn't affect those vehicles, right?
No, I'm trying to help Baltimore County with the roadways, but no, this 2110A is strictly for private property tows.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you all again. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 1676. We'll now turn to HB 178, Delegate Griffith, Vehicle Laws. disabled veteran registration plates issuance.
All right, let's reset a record here. Thank you, Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Delegate Mike Griffith, and I'm here today to request a favorable report on HB 178 vehicle loss disabled veterans registration plates. HB 178 changes the qualifying threshold from 100% disabled to 50% disabled due to a service-connected disability for veterans seeking to obtain a specially licensed plate with the words disabled veteran on it. HB 178 is in the same posture as passed out of this committee last year, passed out of the House unanimously, and has no fiscal note. It has been cross-filed by Senator Will Smith and has letters of support from the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, Maryland Military Coalition, and the Maryland General Assembly House Veterans Caucus. I humbly request a favorable report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this bill sponsor? I do not see any. Thank you very much. Well
Thank
done.
you. Thank you very much.
That concludes the bill hearing on HB 178. We'll now turn to HB's here, HB 148, Delegate Ebersol. I'm not sure he is here. Do not see the MVA here either. He was too fast. And I don't think we have Delegate Kerr yet. Thanks. At least the camera's working. Delegate Stewart. Oh, yes, Delegate Stewart. This is a great time for your history.
Moment in history. Yes, our moment in ENT history, first of the year. Thought this would be a good time. Won't delay us in the afternoon. It has been 21 years to the day since one of our colleagues started their first job in public office on the Hill with a congressman named Brad Sherman. So if everyone could give it up to the newest member of our committee, our chair on this anniversary.
When you said 21 years, I was thinking, who's been around that long? Possibly. Oh my gosh. Wow. Time flies. How are we doing, Trish? Do we have the Department of Veterans Affairs here? Why don't you come up? We can do your bill. Sorry, I saw plates and thought MVA. We'll do the hearing on HB 231 vehicle loss special registration plates, Gold Star and next of kin victims.
Thank you, Chair Corman and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Ross Cohen, and as the Deputy Secretary of Maryland's Department of Veterans Affairs and an Army combat veteran, I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report to waive the fee for special registration plates for Gold Star next of kin families, HB 231, with an amendment to strike language on name and rank due to privacy concerns. Today, I sit before you to express our deepest gratitude and unwavering admiration for a group of individuals whose sacrifices often go unnoticed, Gold Star families. These families have paid the ultimate price, offering their loved ones in service to our nation, and their sacrifice is immeasurable. When we speak of Gold Star families, we are referring to those who have lost a son, daughter, spouse, or close relative in the line of duty. These families bear a burden that is both profound and heart-wrenching, yet they stand resilient, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The Gold Star, symbolizing the loss of a family member in service, is a stark reminder of the sacrifices made by these extraordinary families. It is a symbol not only of grief, but also of honor and valor. Each Gold Star represents a life given selflessly for the ideals that define our great nation: freedom, justice, and liberty. This legislation will go some small way toward honoring and recognizing those lives and those families who gave the ultimate sacrifice. I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report on the bill with amendment, and I'd like to ask my colleague Janice Chance to say a few words.
Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee, I'm grateful for being given the opportunity to share why I feel that the proposed legislation, HB 0231, is important, and I respectfully ask for the committee for a favorable report with an amendment on this bill. I am the proud mother of Captain Jesse Melton III, United States Marine Corps, who was killed on September 9, 2008, while supporting combat operations in Afghanistan during Operation Enduring Freedom. After graduating with honors from Randallstown High School, he attended Messiah University, and after his freshman year, he joined the Marine Corps Reserve. His dream was to change the world and make a difference that would bring God glory. He ran well and finished well. Captain Jesse Melton III lived out the Marine Corps motto, Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Receiving the news that my son was killed was the worst day of my life. Although my heart was aching, I was determined that my son would receive the honor that he deserved because he made the ultimate sacrifice. Therefore, I'm committed to doing all that I'm able to ensure that his selfless sacrifice will never be forgotten. Jesse is interred among thousands of other heroes at Alton National Cemetery. I learned that having a Gold Star license plate is one way that I, along with other Gold Star mothers and families, can honor our heroes. My own Gold Star license plate has led to positive interactions in my life. I have been blessed to meet other Gold Star mothers and family members because they stopped to inquire about how they could obtain a Gold Star license plate themselves. I have also been stopped occasionally by individuals who asked about the significance of the Gold Star license plate that provided me with an opportunity to share about the meaning of the Gold Star, my fallen hero, and my mission. I believe that reducing the burden to acquiring a Gold Star license plate means having more families with this plate and may result in more people asking about the significance of the Gold Star and our heroes. Hopefully, the license plate will also serve as a visual reminder that freedom is not free. I believe that passing this bill will be another opportunity for our elected leaders to demonstrate their unwavering support of Gold Star families. Therefore, I ask the committee for a favorable report with an amendment on HB 0231 to honor our Gold Star families by reducing the burden on applying for these license plates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for this panel? Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for being here. Mr. Morgan, for your service, ma'am, for your sacrifice. I have a technical question. So right now, under the law, it says special registration plate, a recipient of the Gold Star for surviving spouses, parents, and next of kin.
Mm-hmm.
But it also adds next of kin lapel button. So what does the next of kin lapel button add that is not covered under surviving spouses, parents, and next of kin?
Thank you for the question. The next of kin is for service members who did not pass during combat, but they passed in another way. That's the distinction. Whereas the Gold Star is for those who passed in combat.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am interested in what the fee is that you're asking to be waived. How much?
That's a great question. Let me get back to you with the answer. I don't know the answer.
Any additional questions? Okay, I think the whole committee is interested in that question. If you could get it to everybody, that would be much appreciated. Sure. Okay, I think that concludes the bill hearing on HB 231. We will now turn to HB 148, Delegate Ebersol, Department of Transportation, See Someone, Save Someone Act.
I think I have someone, the Mark Union that represents Mark drivers who would like to come up.
Bring up whoever you would like.
Always love being in front of this committee. I really do. Sometimes I wish I was on it, but sometimes I'm glad I am. Chair Corman and Vice Chair Boyce, thank you. Members of the committee for hearing House Bill 148. Human trafficking is, as you all know, one of the largest and fastest growing and heinous criminal enterprises in the country and the world. Up to 800,000 people are estimated to be trafficked across our nation's borders and between them on a yearly basis. The State Department believes, based on estimates, that global human trafficking is a $150 billion a year industry. Human trafficking is dependent on transportation to effectively operate. Public transportation due to its low cost and anonymity resulting from fare cards or single trip tickets is a frequent mode of travel that is clandestine for all trafficking operations. One report found that over 40% of trafficking survivors in the United States said their traffickers use buses, and another 27% reported the use of metros or trains. There are many aspects of human trafficking, but transportation is a common denominator amongst cases. People around a trafficking victim can be trained and empowered to recognize and report the signs of trafficking and help ameliorate these staggering statistics. HB 148 would disrupt recruitment and trafficking operations by working to implement a training program and awareness campaign. The program would provide select employees, taxi cab drivers, metro, light rail, MARC train operators, ride share operators, and many others within the transportation sector with the means to see something, say something if they see something. With the newfound awareness and training to these employees, helping them recognize telltale signs of human trafficking, this law will bring ability to report these suspected incidents. While many transportation hubs have frequent public safety information, and I applaud them for that, already broadcasted, this bill codifies trafficking prevention information at transit stations, airports, port facilities, and rest stops. Public information announcements like this can even help trafficking victims become self-aware of their situation and possibly save them. By helping to educate people about human trafficking and the red flags to look for, to see someone, save someone act will disrupt the conditions consistent with human trafficking. Transportation workers, such as those emphasized in this bill, are eyes and ears within our community. They are uniquely positioned to observe and recognize the signs of human trafficking, and they're uniquely positioned to report it. I respectfully ask for a favorable report, and thank you.
Chairman Corman and members of the committee, my name is David Pendleton. I'm the Assistant Director of the Maryland State Legislative Board for the Transportation Division of SMART. We represent the transportation employees who work for MARC and Amtrak and commuter and long distance service. I'm here today urging a favorable report on HB 448, the See Someone, Save Someone Act. HB 148 will require the Maryland Department of Transportation to develop and implement a training program for our members employed in the transportation sector on the identification and reporting of human trafficking. Human trafficking disproportionately impacts some of the most vulnerable and underserved members of our society. It erodes the safety and health of our communities and transportation networks, the security of our borders, the strength of our economy, and the rule of law. A 2018 Polaris Project study of 104 survivors found that 11% of human trafficking victims are transported on long-distance Amtrak trains and 29% on subway commuter rail. The study also found that the use of buses and trains may be a preferred method of transportation for traffickers because of the low cost and limited interaction with bureaucratic systems. This allows them more anonymity in the ticket buying process and less attention from officials. Our members who work in commuter and passenger service are the first responders to any issues experienced with operations. They are in constant contact with the traveling public and are vigilant in observing their surroundings. With the proper training, they can be a great asset in the fight against human trafficking. Human trafficking is a heinous crime that has no boundaries. It is perpetrated on its victims from small towns to large cities and everywhere in between. Prevention requires action, and the more employees are trained in recognizing and reporting these acts, the easier it is for them to see someone, save someone. Governor Moore in the State of Speech called for action on public safety as one of his top priorities. Nothing is more important than protecting the citizens of this state from criminals, especially protecting our children. SMART proudly supports this bill and emphatically urges a favorable report on HB 148. Thank you.
Thank you both. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill. It's a very important bill. Two quick questions. Who pays for the training?
Trainings are available widely for free from many organizations. My chief of staff's out and I wanted to get a few names before I came. We've brought bills like this before for truckers and for hotel workers. And there are lots of organizations that offer this training for free. So the MDOT could create their own, but there's no need to.
Great. Okay, thank you. And then on page 3, line 13, a transportation network operator. Would that include Uber and Lyft? Are they included under this?
Yes, I believe that was our intent.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Ruth.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify one thing. You mentioned the border, but you're talking about domestic human trafficking also. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Within our borders, I read that sentence and I realized we didn't get it quite right. Within and across our borders, for sure.
Okay, great. And can you just briefly talk about what type of person might be vulnerable to human trafficking and how traffickers work?
Oh, gee, you know, the term grooming is what we look at mostly. The interesting thing is many people don't realize they're being trafficked. And that's why when I put that in there, I believe that the public information that exists, someone can see this and suddenly become self-aware that they've been trafficked. So yes, it's a slow process and sometimes, but sometimes very deliberate and sometimes very physical. In other words, some people absolutely know they're being trafficked, but just have no idea how to escape from it. And so it can run the spectrum actually. And I thank you for the question. My concern is that there are, you know, like people say, well, what are some things that they might be trained in? I haven't done the training. I'm not in any of those things that I've said, but I did take a look and there's lots of things you can look at in a person that's riding on a bus or riding on a train. A conductor could see it. One of the most obvious ones is a tattoo with numbers on it is often, people who are in traffic are labeled so they can be kept track of. Other people handling documents for someone is usually a sign that that's a good flag that they might be being trafficked if they're handling the tickets and giving the tickets and not letting them handle their own. And then also just the signs that we all look for, signs of physical abuse or submission. Someone's being talked to to make them submissive. And that will occur in public at times in order to keep someone who's being trafficked under control.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Delegate Stein. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate, thanks for bringing this important bill. Just a question about the procedures and policies that employers would need to implement. Would templates for these procedures and policies be provided by the department so that each company doesn't have to sort of come up with it on their own?
Yes, I think they could. MDOT did submit a letter and although it was informational, if you read it, you'll find that there's a tint to it. Okay, for sure. One of the things that I think maybe the bill would need an adjustment on is that they felt that they were being responsible for taxi cab companies, and maybe those companies on their own should be responsible for finding it and doing this. I don't know if that answers your question exactly.
It was more as to whether the department would work with covered employers under this bill so that the employers would have readily available the information for the procedures and the policies that they have to implement.
Yeah, I think it would fall to them, to be honest with you.
All right, thank you. Any further question? Vice Chair Boyce.
Mr. Chair, good to see you, Delegate.
Nice to see you too.
I wanted to ask a question leading off of Delegate Love's question. So if somebody like an Uber has their own training program already, would this bill mandate them to do something additional or would it allow them to continue their human trafficking?
Yeah, we're not very specific about what the training has to look like here. Just that there be a training. I think the only thing they might have to do is train within a certain number of days of people. You know, we have a 90-day, within 90 days of them.
So if they already have a training, they can't submit that they already do that training and that their drivers are trained.
As long as they can, no, they could, but we have a couple of requirements about the time frame of that. They would have to guarantee us that submit that they had done it in the first 90 days that somebody becomes an Uber driver or a Lyft driver.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
I do not see any further questions, so thank you both. We have a favorable amendment in-person witness, Michelle Blackwell, Uber Technologies.
Thank you all very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Michelle Blackwell, and I am a Senior Public Policy Manager with Uber. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today on HB 148. I think a few of the just minor tweaks that we were going to suggest have already been discussed by the committee. I do want to just say that we do support this bill. Uber has partnered with leading organizations to advocate for change and increase awareness about the signs of human trafficking for drivers who use our platform. So we are supportive of this effort to increase awareness of human trafficking among drivers who are active on the platform in the state of Maryland. I was going to ask about we offer currently human trafficking education. I think it meets a lot of the requirements that are already currently in this bill. And so I was going to speak to that, but that has already been raised. I think one thing we would also suggest is that we'd like to, sort of balance the ability of drivers to get on the road with safety. So the way that we have read the bill that is currently drafted, drivers would have to complete the training before taking a first trip. But we would like to ask for at least like a 90-day grace period to allow for drivers to have training within that time frame. And then finally, we asked the committee just tweak the bill's language to clarify that certain individuals, including transportation network operators, are not employees. Currently, the way the legislation outlines those training requirements and certification requirements are on the employers. So groups such as TNCs and even independently owned taxis would not necessarily fall underneath that category. So we would just recommend placing some clarifying language in the bill about those requirements. Thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? I do not see any. We also have, thank you very much. We also have in-person informational testimony, Amanda Rodriguez from the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, I am testifying on behalf of Amanda Rodriguez and the Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force. My name is Diana Beeson, and I am the Engagement and Policy Initiatives Manager for Turnaround. The task force appreciates the need for additional awareness of human trafficking and appreciates the delegates' continued attention to this very serious issue. The task force has conveyed their concerns to the sponsor, and we are happy to work with him on possible amendments. I would be happy to answer any questions or take any questions back to the task force.
Could you just tell us what the amendments do?
Maryland Human Trafficking Task Force would like to collaborate in the training efforts. And there are some concerns about employees being told to contact police or the National Human Trafficking Hotline. There are potential situations where that could actually be more dangerous for the human trafficking survivor.
Any further questions for the task force? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the bill hearing on HB 148. Delegate Weibel, just for your benefit, we're going to do Delegate Kerr's 2 bills, and then we'll bring you up early as requested, okay? So we'll now turn to HB 278, Delegate Kerr, Urban State Highway Speed Limits Exceptions.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Delegate Ken Kerr. I'm here today to present House Bill 278, Urban Highways Speed Limit Exceptions. So House Bill 278 authorizes the State Highway Administration to reduce the speed limit on specific urban highways by up to 5 miles an hour without undertaking an engineering study, a traffic or an engineering study. The bill applies to state-owned, state-maintained highways located within municipalities. The bill is needed because roadways designs have not changed along with development trends. Some of our urban areas in our municipalities still have the same roads they had when the population was half or a third the size it is today. And the current speed limits no longer reflect the reality of pedestrian traffic. Speed limit reductions are a low-cost countermeasure that begin to address this need to retrofit our urbanized area highways. So where would this potentially apply? The legislation authorizes the posted speed limit reduction of 5 miles per hour on urban highways in the state. Per state law, an urban highway is a state-owned road that's constructed with curbs and gutters and has an enclosed drainage system located in an urban area on which is located a public facility that creates pedestrian traffic and located within the boundaries of a municipality. So I would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 278, and I would like to turn this over now to my witness, Candi Holford.
Thank you, Delegate Kerr. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Candi Holford. I am the Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility at the Secretary's Office at MDOT. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today in support of House Bill 278. And thank you, Delegate Kerr and Senator Jackson, for their sponsorship on this very important initiative. Slower traffic creates a safer environment for everyone. Last year, I got to experience what it was like to be hit by a speeding and intoxicated driver. I was hit so suddenly and violently that my iPhone dialed 911 by itself. Luckily, I was in my car and not on foot. My car was totaled, but I was okay. A pedestrian struck at 25 miles per hour has a 25% risk of serious injury or death. And that jumps to 50% at 33 miles per hour and 75% at 41 miles per hour. This bill authorizes SHA to expedite incremental changes to posted speed limits on roads like Maryland 355 in Montgomery County more quickly and at minimal cost. Under current law, any changes require several months and several $1,000s. So jurisdictions have taken it upon themselves to change the law, which, as we know, is a process. House Bill 278 provides state legislators the opportunity to directly impact the efficacy of speed management on state highways with one action, eliminating the requirement for a traffic engineering study in areas where known issues exist would save the state valuable time and money. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, small changes in average speed can on average yield significant changes in crash and injury outcomes. In summary, providing an appropriate speed limit results in reduced crashes, and experts recommend incremental changes to progressively decelerate the flow of traffic.
Thank you.
For these reasons, I ask you to, I respectfully request the committee grant a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you both. We do have some questions. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you both for being here. And I'm so sorry to hear about your accident. I'm glad you're okay. Delegate Kerr, I have two questions for you. One is, can't SHA then just keep reducing by 5 miles an hour to the point where they've reduced it dramatically? Because I don't see any time limits in there. And then number two, as you mentioned, ma'am, locals have done this a couple of times. I know in Montgomery County, we've been addressing this. Isn't this more suited to the locals who know their roads better to come to the legislature and say, we think this makes sense?
I do agree with that, actually. And like I said, that has been kind of going on to date. I think this would give State Highway a little more authority now that we have a resource like the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan to make changes more quickly, rather than waiting for a request from the locals. And yes, in response to the successive sort of reduction of the speed limit, I think on a lot of these high incident corridors, there is a plan already in place to a long-term approach to reducing the pedestrian and bicycle crashes that happen. But there is a need for more near-term and incremental measures where funding or time is an issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you very much, Delegate Kerr. Thank you for this bill. My question is about how this actually works. Who initiates the decision to try to lower the speed limit on a state highway in an urban area?
That could either come from the municipality or from MDOT if they notice an increase in pedestrian injuries or vehicular collisions.
And what would the process be? Would they do a study of any kind? Would they do like, traffic counts or anything like that?
Well, that's the point, Delegate Healy, is that by doing these incremental lowering of the speed limits, it would not require a study.
So it would require no study at all. They wouldn't even do a traffic count to see if there is actually a problem.
Yeah, there would be it wouldn't be done arbitrarily or capriciously. It would be done in response to a high level of pedestrian injuries or vehicular collisions.
Okay, thank you. That's what I would need to do. Thanks.
Delegate Teresa.
you, Mr. Chairman. And I admit, I'm just looking at this now. But is there somewhere in here that it says if there's been a lot of incidents or there's been problems in that location before?
There's nothing to that level of specificity.
Okay, so it just is sort of assumed that they wouldn't go about doing it if they didn't need to.
Right. If there's
Okay.
no need for it, then we wouldn't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Delegate Kerr. So I want to follow up on Delegate Love's question about, so is there any coordination at all? So for instance, municipality can say, hey, I want to lower this state road that comes through here at whatever 5 miles, and then it'll be done. Or vice versa, would SHA decide that they want to lower it and ask permission or just do it?
SHA would.
Go ahead. I think you know better than I do.
SHA would conduct an evaluation. I think it's, as an engineer, they are trained to perform some sort of review. But an official traffic engineering study can take up to 3 months just to conduct, and then you'll have to see what the determination is, and then schedule a crew to go out there and change the signs. So that takes a little bit of time.
So I guess somewhat to Delegate Terasa's point, there is somewhat of an evaluation to see if the reduction is warranted, but you wouldn't actually do a traffic study. So you may look up number of crashes or something like that.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, the reason why this bill is written for urban highways is that there is data that shows that we're having more frequent crashes in urban areas, more severe crashes in suburban activity centers. Our suburban activity centers often have what is classified as an urban highway. So we know that the data is there, and we also have a pedestrian safety action plan that identifies what corridors, rank the highest, not just with crash data, but also looking at equity measures and other indicators to kind of prioritize.
And so just to clarify, there would be a working relationship between SHA and the local jurisdiction on this. It wouldn't be kind of a preemption. Just
chances are, if they want to reduce the speed limit, we've already been talking about it for a while, or there's already some other improvement, in play.
Okay. So last question, this wouldn't affect some place like Baltimore City that manages the state roads?
No, it wouldn't impact Baltimore City directly. However, I think Baltimore City has approached the legislature with requests similar to Montgomery County and other jurisdictions to change the law.
This particular law, or we're just talking about like I-83?
Not this bill.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for this panel? Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Delegate Kerr. We had got a lot of bills here also with speed enforcement and cameras. So you would propose to drop the speed limit 5 miles an hour, and then you have people who are customer, let's say it's 50 miles an hour, 35 miles, you drop 5 miles an hour, and they're customarily used to going 35 miles an hour. Then you drop it to 30 with sort of not a lot of notice, yet the speed cameras are sitting there taking pictures. How do you sort of choreograph that?
I think that would be something that our office would work out with the jurisdiction directly based on what the structure is, the fee collection structure is. Generally, we defer to the locals when it comes to speed cameras. So I think there would have to be some discussion on that.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you both. We have additional favorable testimony from Bill George, Maryland Municipal League, Joshua Feldmark, Bike Maryland, and Marissa Valeri from the city the vice chair in my elementary school was in, the city of Rockville.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, members of the committee. My name is Bill George, the Maryland Municipal League, here today in support of House Bill 278. As you heard from the sponsor, this bill is targeted at municipalities. And I can tell you that there are many, if not most, if not all, municipalities have a state highway that runs through them. And oftentimes it is a main street of theirs. It's the main thoroughfare. It might be their main street or the one that brings the most people into and out of town. Critical function of local government is to protect those that use the public rights of way. And while this may be an SHA road, oftentimes it's the local government leaders that hear the complaints about speeding first. Local governments have some authority to adjust their speed limits on their own roads. But when it comes to SHA, as you've heard, there's essentially a request process that will come from the municipality to adjust the speed limit down. So what this bill would do it would really improve the local input into what happens on non-municipal roads within a municipality. As you can see, there's the speeding is one of the, if not the most common complaint that I hear from anecdotally from our municipal leaders that they hear from their residents. This is on municipal roads, but it's also on state highways that run through municipalities. We appreciate this bill and think it will really help in reducing traffic accidents on state highways that are located in municipalities, and ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
In the spirit of you not getting sicker of me, the bike people say us too.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Marissa Valeri, Rockville City Council member, and I thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of the Mayor and Council, I want to thank Delegate Kerr for sponsoring this critically important legislation. The Mayor and Council unanimously support HB 278. This legislation aligns with Rockville's Vision Zero program to eliminate serious injury and fatal crashes by 2030. Authorizing the reduction of the speed limit by 5 miles per hour without a traffic study removes a barrier to enhance safety. State roads in Rockville are among the most dangerous roads in the city. 6 roads are categorized as high injury network segments in Rockville. Of these 6 roads, 5 are maintained by the state. Reduced speed would create safer conditions at the intersection of Atlantic Avenue and Maryland 586, also known as Veers Mill Road, where a tragic pedestrian fatality occurred at the end of 2023. This segment of Veers Mill Road currently has a posted speed limit of 40 miles per hour. I grew up on Newport Mill Road, right off of Veers Mill Road. I currently live on Midway Avenue, just off of Veers Mill. I make the crossing at Veers Mill and Atlantic Avenue literally every day, and I have witnessed speeding too many times to count. It is an extremely dangerous road that lends itself to high rates of speed due to the lack of curbs and steep hills. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration studies clearly show that higher speeds result in a greater likelihood of fatalities. By lowering speed limits on state roads, HB 278 would provide an important safeguard for those who walk, bike, roll, and drive in Rockville. For these reasons, we urge the committee to provide HB 278 with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this panel? Do not see any. Thank you all very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 278. We will stay with Delegate Kerr for HB 282, speed monitoring systems, agencies, statements, and certificates of violations. And if you have a panel, feel free to bring them up.
And good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, members of the committee. Delegate Ken Kerr here presenting House Bill 282, speed monitoring systems, agencies, statements, and certificates of violations. So automated speed enforcements are also known as photo radar or speed cameras. These are devices that are used to enforce traffic laws while using fewer law enforcement personnel and resources. These tools allow the state and local governments to and law enforcement agencies to remotely capture images of drivers violating traffic laws and issue citations. These stations are civil in nature. So it's widely accepted that speed cameras are effective in saving lives. A 2016 study of speed cameras in Montgomery County found that after about 7.5 years after this program began, the portion of drivers traveling at least 10 miles over the speed limit had declined on streets with speed cameras. The cameras also reduced the likelihood of fatal or severe crashes by 19%. The study concluded that the likelihood of a driver exceeding the speed limit by more than 10 miles per hour on roads where speed cameras were used decreased by 62% compared to similar roads that did not have speed cameras. So the bill that I bring today does not expand the use of speed cameras, which for most of Maryland is restricted to construction zones and school zones. Instead, what it does is it redefines who is qualified to interpret the speed video in order to determine if a violation has occurred. Currently, in addition to being reviewed by the automated speed enforcement system contractor, the citation is then additionally verified and approved by a sworn police officer employed by the Maryland State Police, Maryland Transportation Authority, or a local police department. The reviewing police officer signs a statement on the citation that indicates that the vehicle was being operated in violation and records the infraction. So what we're trying to do here is reduce the amount of time it takes to review this video feed and the cost that it brings to incorporated municipalities that do not have their own police force, yet do have a school zone or a construction zone in them. So I have some witnesses here with me today, and I would like to begin with Bill George of Maryland Municipal League.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and Delegate Kerr for bringing this bill. This is an MML priority bill for this year. It will positively impact all of our members. You'll hear from Mayor Michael O'Connor and Chief Bacorn from the city of Denton, hearing from their perspectives on two municipalities that have police departments. I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about those that don't. One of the biggest hurdles we've heard anecdotally from them is that having to find a benevolent law enforcement agency to take over the review at the final stage is oftentimes the biggest impediment to them implementing a speed camera program. I've heard that some have that in their budget ready to go forward with the speed camera program, but they haven't been able to find a law enforcement agency with which to partner. There are about 70 municipalities in the state without a police agency. 2 currently operate speed camera programs. That's it. It's a very difficult hurdle to find to find a law enforcement agency to take on the review for incidents that take place outside of that law enforcement's jurisdiction. We used language this year with Delegate Kerr's approval to pull from the red light camera language. So right now, the red light cameras are allowed to be reviewed by technicians, not law enforcement officers. And this would standardize some of the camera review with some of the other automated enforcement mechanisms that we have in the state. We've heard past opposition on a bill like this in 2023 had to go back to the legislative intent of this expanding speed cameras statewide in 2009. MML was at the table then with amendments in support of making it a statewide program. And again, in 2014, when there were serious revisions to the program, adding additional safeguards to operating speed cameras within municipalities. It's been 15 years since the program was first authorized. It's been 10 years since they've been severely and it's time to look at it again and see whether the program is really working for everybody. We think this change will make things better for everybody. Thank you very much.
Lord Mayor.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, I certainly appreciate your time and I'm honored to be here before you and ask for a favorable report on House Bill 282. As one of those municipalities that can personally vouch for speed concerns being the number one concern that we hear from our residents about what's going on in their neighborhoods, we're looking for all the available tools at our disposal. I can tell you it would be wonderful if I could place a law enforcement officer in every neighborhood on every street where I have complaints about speeding. As we know across the state, it is simply not a practical solution. And these automated enforcement tools are force multipliers that help our law enforcement officers spend their time where our residents also want them most, which may or may not be doing speed enforcement if there are other tools available. For the last 2 years, we have been one of those municipalities that has engaged in a partnership with the town of Newmarket to provide the professional services that they need in order to conduct a speed camera program on their main street. We will pay police officers as an overtime assignment anywhere from $45 to $60 an hour to undertake this work that we have a part-time speed camera enforcement individual who monitors the administrative side of this program and does the red light camera program in the city of Frederick could certainly be trained to do this as well. If we could reserve those dollars we're now paying in overtime to uniformed law enforcement officers, we would allow them to spend more of their time on the street doing the things that our residents most want them to do in a law enforcement capacity. And that is probably not sitting at a desk reviewing speed camera violations. A trained technician can absolutely do this work and provide a better cost benefit to our shared taxpaying residents. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is George Bacorn. I'm the Chief of Police for the Town of Denton Police Department. I'm also the Secretary of the Maryland Municipal League Police Executive Association, and I'm here to testify in support of this bill also. I have some personal knowledge with speed camera programs. In 2011, we initiated our program in the town of Denton, and I personally reviewed and approved violations from November of 2011 till September of 2020. On an average year, we reviewed about 900 violations, or I reviewed 900 violations, and that is still going on today. It's time consuming. It's not difficult, but it is time consuming. And with a sworn police officer doing that, it just takes away from other duties that they should be performing in the community, what my community would rather have them doing than sitting in front of a computer reviewing these things on a daily basis. Some of the other things that I kind of equate it to a code violation. These are civil offenses. They're not moving violations. That they kind of relate to a parking citation, if you will, and we don't require sworn law enforcement officers to issue parking citations, rather non-sworn staff that can do that. So I respectfully request a favorable report.
Thank you. We do have a number of questions. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Kerr, I really appreciate the intent of this legislation, but I have a question. So the gentleman from the Maryland Municipal League, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but he said that we already have this for red light cameras. Well, my question is going to go to what if the ticket is contested? Who is the person responsible? Where's the accountability? Is it some technician or is it a police officer? I never get tickets, but if I did get a ticket, and I wanted to contest it, who would show up on the other side to say that I was wrong? And let me just make a comment about red lights, because I think with red light cameras, it's much clearer from the camera. The light was either red or it wasn't. When you're speeding, it's a little bit more subjective. I won't say subjective, but it could be a little bit grayer, right? In terms of, I wasn't speeding, I was speeding, depending upon what that limit is. So I am concerned about the citizens being able to contest the ticket, and who is it that they, who's responsible, who's accountable for that?
Chief Bacorn, you think?
Yeah, I can answer that. It would be the technicians, the person reviewing the citation. Right now, it is a police officer that would do that. However, the testimony would be no different than what a parking enforcement officer would do as a non-sworn person issuing a parking ticket that someone wanted to take to court. and contest that parking ticket. That would be, you know, the only difference is that it's a sworn officer having to go to court that day, again, taking away from his duties or her duties, doing other law enforcement duties, rather than just a civilian person that is capable of reviewing these. And just to speak to the grayness, and I think the courts have clearly stated that radar is accurate, and that's all these cameras are, is a radar device attached to a camera when it captures a speed over whatever the threshold is, 12 miles an hour over the speed limit, and it captures an image, actually several images, to show that the vehicle's in motion.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank you so much. I definitely understand the need for this. In my county, there's been a lot of discussion recently about speed cameras. And some people are concerned that they believe that the cameras in some cases are just revenue generators. And so I think knowing that a law enforcement officer is reviewing every one of these gives some people some level of confidence and comfort that, you know, it's actually a genuine concern. I noticed that, so I guess first part of my question is, like, what kind of, if a law enforcement officer is not reviewing it, what kind of safeguards are there for that? And how do we make sure people have confidence in that? And then also I see it says a technician employed by an agency. So this would be somebody employed by the police department, not employed by the contractor that installed the speed camera. Is that correct?
Mayor, do you have the answer to that?
Well, I would say in terms of the information that Delegate Kerr provided in terms of the data that suggests that automated enforcement does reduce fatalities and crashes that cause injury, whether or not they're being reviewed by a civilian or uniformed personnel, that data would stand on its own, that the presence of the automated enforcement itself is having the desired effect of making our roadways safer. And so what we are talking about is an employee of the city of Frederick, someone in our instance who we would control, who would be that individual who would sign off. And we have an existing automated enforcement coordinator who is that individual who goes into court and provides that testimony because they are the expert that has done the review of those citations.
Thank you so much.
Delegate Stein. Mr. Chair, thank you. Delegate Kerr, I understand the rationale for this, and it seems like there would be substantial cost savings to municipalities. My question is, and to follow up what sort of Delegate Ruth was saying, the technician doesn't seem to be defined, or the training, is it commonly understood among municipalities, who is eligible to be a technician and what type of training they receive?
Mr. George.
Yeah, so Chief Baker may be able to speak to the training that law enforcement officers currently have to go through in order to be to review this type of thing. But yes, that's the understanding, is that this will be a trained technician who receives the same training as the police officers do currently.
Okay.
And an answer?
Yes, that answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a follow-up question to that for Chief. Is it Bakhorn?
Yes.
Yes, Chief Bakhorn. So I know that the average police officer in America receives approximately 833 hours of training, basic training. So I imagine in your lifetime, in your career, you've had way more than 1,000 hours of police training, in addition to the training that was just mentioned that the technician would also go through. How many hours of that, more than 1,000 of police training, how many hours of that do you think was dedicated to learning skills that make you uniquely more qualified than a government technician to review photos of cars?
I'm not quite sure I understand. Just if you could.
Yeah, sure. I'll rephrase. How much of your training as a police officer do you think was at all relevant? So much more relevant that we have to have you doing this. how much of that police training, was it 100%? Was it 0%? Was directly relevant to the job of looking at images of cars?
Of looking at images of cars, I would say maybe 5%.
Okay, all right.
In my younger years, when I was a road police officer, I was a radar operator and stopped cars for speeding and things like that. However, for just looking at these and understanding what you're looking at, 0.
Okay.
Because they're the way the systems are designed, you've got 3 images. One is of the tag. The first one is when it enters the radar beam above the speed limit, and the second one is farther down the road when it captures the second image of the vehicle, the violating vehicle, so that you can see that it's moving. So
So do you have any concern whatsoever that a government bureaucrat would be somehow worse at this job than you were going through the exact same training? Do you have any concern?
In my agency, no.
Thank you.
Delegate Long.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure that I'm clear and just not missing this. Excuse me. So would this be at just a position solely dedicated to just reviewing? It would be a new hire that you would bring on board on staff, just a totally new position, or would pay be commensurate to what an officer already receives? Just some of those details.
I think that probably depends on the municipal government. So in the city of Frederick, where we have 600 plus employees and an individual already in a part-time capacity doing this, I know what that position looks like. In a smaller town like Newmarket, which has a much smaller staff, their trained individual could be their town clerk or someone else associated with their local government. So the idea is to expand that capability and give a local government the tools available and allow them in the best ways that they can with their budgets and their personnel to manage a program that the evidence says makes our roads safer.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions for this panel. We do have other favorable witnesses. Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties and Councilmember Zola Shaw from the city of Rockville. Once again, home of the elementary school, the vice chair and I went to.
I'll go ahead and start since I'm here. Thank you to the chair. Thank you to members of the committee. My name is Sarah Sample. I'm here on behalf of Maryland Association of Counties, and we are here in support of this bill. This adds flexibility to how we can delegate tasks across our public safety workforce. I don't think anyone on this committee is probably a stranger to the fact that we have a severe workforce shortage when it comes to our public safety officials. And so this would really help us have a lot more utility in terms of how we deal with signing these statements. And so we would certainly urge a favorable report on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corman and members of the committee. I'm Councilmember Isola Shaw from the city of Rockville. On behalf of the mayor and council, I want to thank Delegate Kerr for sponsoring this important legislation. The mayor and council and the Maryland Municipal League jointly support HB 282 as a 2024 priority. This legislation provides authorization for speed camera images to be reviewed and citations signed off by a trained technician. Current law requires a sworn police officer to sign off on speed camera violations. HB 282 would provide several benefits for local police departments and the communities they serve. The legislation would enhance public safety by freeing up police officers to be deployed in the community and focused on proactive policing and crime prevention. In the current context of increased demand for police services, our staff resources have been strained. HB 282 would help to relieve some of the administrative burdens placed on sworn officers. The legislation would standardize the process for automated traffic enforcement by using the same process that is authorized for the red light camera program, which permits a trained technician to sign off on a violation. HB 282 is smart public policy that would allow police agencies to prioritize core public safety duties, advance transportation equity, and better protect the health and safety of the communities they serve. For these reasons, the City of Rockville urges the committee to provide a favorable report for this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you both very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 282. We'll jump a little bit out of order for our ENT expatriate, Delegate Wyville. House Bill HB 437, Maryland Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council membership. If you have a panel or anything, feel free to bring them up.
I do not. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and honorable members of the Environment Transportation Committee. It's good to be back with you again. I'm Delegate Wyville, pleased to present House Bill 437. I would like to think that this will be the easiest bill you'll hear all session, as the reprint of the bill simply alters the membership of the Zero Emissions Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council by adding the Secretary of DGS or their designee, as well as a representative of a heavy-duty plug-in electric drive vehicle manufacturer. And it does extend the deadline for submitting a final report to June 30, 2026. There is, however, a lot of interest in the board, and there are 3 amendments of which I'm aware. One adds an electric vehicle driver advocacy organization. One adds a representative of natural gas company in the state. And a 3rd amendment would add a member of the Maryland automotive dismantling and recycling industry. I really take no position on the amendments, and I'll leave it to the committee's expertise as to the disposition of those. That's all I have. I ask for a favorable report. No questions, Delegate Holmes.
He was going to ask you about ground rents. So
yeah,
Delegate Holmes.
Good when did they start ground rents? What year was that?
Good to see you, my good friend.
Yes.
Isn't it true that last year there was a bill sponsored by some guy named Holmes, and it was passed the House, I believe, 138 to 1. Can you inform the committee in terms of who that one was?
That one person actually read that bill.
Move unfavorable.
Are there any further questions? Delegate Stewart. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm extremely, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review it. I'm extremely concerned about the bill's fiscal note.
I thank you for bringing.
Do you care to comment?
I did want to comment on that.
We do have a limit. We do have a limit, as you know, that we have to get appropriations approval.
Yes. As you know, fiscal notes are very important. It is 0. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate.
Okay. We do have some additional witnesses, favorable in-person testimony from Richard Tabuteau, Volvo Group North America, and Bruce Bariano, apparently representing, is it LKQ Corporation? I don't know if that's a candy company or what, but welcome back. Oh, sorry. You know what? You're favorable to amendments, Bruce, but just stay right there. And we'll also bring up Emil Nussbaum from the Automotive Recyclers Association. And we'll just take the favorable first from Mr. Tabuteau and then move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Richard Tabuteau. I represent Volvo Group North America in Maryland. I feel like I spent a lot of time here last year dealing with advanced clean trucks. This bill is sort of a completion of what we did last year. So if you recall, under Delegate Love's leadership, there was a bill that would require Maryland to join California's advanced clean truck rule, which we passed. The governor also had a bill that created $10 million in rebates for the purchase of electric Class 8 trucks. And this bill for us to become joining into ZVIC is kind of a completion in that. So just a reminder, Volvo is Maryland's last major auto manufacturer. They have over 1,500 UAW workers in Hagerstown. If you see a Volvo 18-wheeler anywhere in the United States, the engine, the transmission, and the axles were all built in Maryland. But in addition to that, they are building the modular power boxes of their Class 8 trucks also in Hagerstown, which is basically the brains of a zero emission heavy duty truck. So as we move towards that future, we think it's important that we have a heavy duty manufacturer on the council. Currently, there's only one representative, which I think their perspective is generally related to passenger vehicles, light duty. If you look at my written testimony, you can see that even the council itself has recognized that they need a voice from our community. They released or created a work group this past year on zero emission heavy duty trucks without an actual manufacturer participating in that process. So hope you can support this bill. We appreciate the leadership of Delegate Weivel in putting this in, and thank you.
We should go next.
Hold on, we'll turn the mic back on. Don't touch the button. Go ahead.
Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee, my name's Emil Nussbaum, and I'm the VP of Strategy, Government and Regulatory Affairs with the Automotive Recyclers Association. Our association is the national association representing automotive dismantlers and recyclers throughout the country. We represent approximately 30 members in the state of Maryland, and also are here to talk about the additional 30 members that are of the automotive recycling community within Maryland as well. I'm the co-chair of NatBat International's Policy and Regulatory Committee, in a duty I serve in a voluntary role to help promote policies that are going to help the transition to electric vehicles throughout the country. We have also been very active on other state committees to help with this transition moving forward in states such as California, Illinois, Texas, and then also as a member of the LiBridge Public-Private Partnership with 28 federal agencies as well. So auto recyclers currently are processing many of the 10 to 15 million vehicles that reach their end of life every year. Our members are into putting each component of that vehicle to its highest and best use, both in reuse and repurposing and remanufacturing and then recycling capabilities. The Worcester Polytechnic Institute has found that our industry is actually carbon negative, and it is important for us to be included on this committee on the Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council, because our members are currently at the forefront of ensuring that every part of an electric vehicle is reused, repurposed, and subsequently recycled in a safe and responsible manner. And in addition, to provide affordable repair parts for vehicle owners, which will extend and allow for vehicle owners with electric vehicles of all socioeconomic backgrounds to be able to afford affordable repair parts, which will increase access to electric vehicles as well. So for those reasons, I respectfully request that a member representing the automotive dismantling and recycling community be included on the council, and so that we can provide our best feedback. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bruce Bariano. I'm here on behalf of LKQ. And I believe you received today a letter from LKQ explaining who we are. We are a member of the council that Mr. Nussbaum just spoke about, and strongly would like an amendment, as was indicated, to add such an individual to this. LKQ is a Fortune 500 international company. They have 9 locations in the state of Maryland, in Baltimore, Easton, Edgewater, Gaithersburg, Glen Burnie, Halethorpe, Mount Airy, and they are the largest collective owner of aftermarket and end-of-life products and parts of electric vehicles. They've been in this business for a very long period of time, have a great deal of knowledge and experience with electronic vehicles and the parts, and as indicated, their safe disposal or their safe reuse. And it would make every sense in the world for such a council to have their expertise to the auto recycling and dismantlers representative. So we would ask for an amendment, which we will be sending to the committee, for such amendment to be added. It's a friendly amendment, just trying to strengthen from knowledge and experience the work of this very important commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bruce, I'm confused. Have you sent it or will you send it?
Excuse me?
Have you sent it or will you send it?
It will be sent in
It will
very
be-
shortly.
Okay,
And very simply, it will use the phrase auto recycler and dismantler representative of the industry.
okay, thank
I
you.
will get that to you by the end of the day.
Mr. Chair, another, please. Thank you. Richard, nice
Hi.
to see you again. How are
See
you? So you said, basically Volvo will be a member of this group, but Volvo
No.
isn't listed in the bill. It's just understood that one representative of a heavy duty plug-in would be Volvo. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
but I would say that we sell more Class 8 electric vehicles than any other manufacturer.
I understand. I just wanted to make it clear for the record that
Yeah.
Volvo is actually not listed in the bill.
Yes,
by
yes,
name.
you're right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you all very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 437. We will now turn to the bill hearing for HB 298. Delegate Munoz, thanks for your patience. The Move Get Out the Way Act.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair. Good afternoon, Environment and Transportation Committee colleagues. For the record, my name is Delegate Rachel Munoz, and I come before you today to humbly present House Bill 298, the Highway Left Lane Safety Act. With the amendment you should have, you will see that we changed the name of the bill and added Chair C.T. Wilson as a co-sponsor. With these changes, this bipartisan bill now has a cross-file in the Senate, SB 768. This legislation presents a crucial opportunity for us to address an issue that directly impacts the safety and efficiency of our roadways, while also aligning with our values of promoting equity and sustainability. Here in the General Assembly, we are committed to creating communities that are safe and accessible for all residents. Traffic congestion not only hampers our ability to travel efficiently, but also poses significant safety risks for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists alike. By enacting measures to improve traffic flow and reduce congestion, we can enhance the overall quality of life for Maryland residents. The Highway Left Lane Safety Act is not just about streamlining traffic, it's about promoting fairness and equity on our roadways. All too often, slower moving vehicles occupying the left lanes create bottlenecks and hinder the ability of others to travel freely. This disproportionately affects low-income communities who may rely more heavily on public transportation and are thus more vulnerable to the impacts of congestion. Moreover, studies have shown that reducing congestion through measures such as requiring slower traffic to keep right can lead to significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and air pollution. By promoting smoother traffic flow, we can contribute to our broader efforts to combat climate change and create a more sustainable future for generations to come. Furthermore, the Highway Left Lane Safety Act includes provisions to educate drivers about lane usage requirements, ensuring that all motorists are aware of their responsibilities on the road. This educational component is critical for promoting safe and responsible driving practices among all Maryland residents. In conclusion, the Highway Left Lane Safety Act embodies our commitment to creating safer, more equitable, and more sustainable communities. By supporting this legislation, we can make meaningful progress towards these goals while also improving the daily lives of Maryland residents. I urge you all to join Chair Wilson and I in supporting this important bill, and I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 298.
Thank you. We have a question from Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. So I've had the experience of passing a vehicle to the right, but I'm not passing by much faster, but I am going faster than them. Would I still be in a situation like that? And in those situations, I've had vehicles come up behind me very fast, flashing their lights. I've also had vehicles swerving around me to the right in that gap, but I am going faster than the vehicle to the right of me. In that situation, would I be liable for this under this law?
So can you gave like a number of scenarios.
So let's say the vehicle to the right of me is going 55 miles an hour and I'm going 60 miles an hour. and to pass them. Would I be in violation of this law?
No, I think you'd be following the law as it's written.
Okay, and so the other thing is I remember when this original law was passed for the rural roads only, and it was agreed that it wouldn't be a citation violation, but it looks like this is now changing that to add a citation and fines. Is that correct?
That is correct based on the Senate crossfile, but I am open to the committee, using their wisdom to change that if you'd like.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is, you said that Delegate or Chair C.T. Wilson also is a co-sponsor of this bill?
Yes.
I do not see his name on the bill.
I believe we worked with the committee and his office, and so it should be there. And if it's not now, perhaps there's like a technical thing that has to happen in committee itself.
Yeah, so just a reminder, Delegate, we don't amend a bill until we're moving that bill, and this is the
Okay.
bill hearing. So if the Chair of Economic Matters wants to co-sponsor a bill in this committee via an amendment, that can happen when we move the bill, if we move the bill.
I see.
But-
Okay. And I know he's put the request in, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, although I would say, just say generally, sorry, Delegate Foley, I don't think we should make it a habit to be doing cross-committee co-sponsorship amendments, just my general view of the world given 10 years here, but sorry to interrupt, Delegate Foley.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. That was my only question.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you, Delegate Munoz. We do have, if they're in the waiting room, a favorable witness, Michael Shear from the Fraternal Order of Police. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm Mike Shire. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Fraternal Order of Police. I spent a fair amount of time in the judiciary, so it's nice to see some new faces over here. I've been a police officer in Maryland for 20 years and 6 days. Yeah, we count. And I am an attorney barred to practice in Maryland. Speaking here in support of House Bill 298 on behalf of the Maryland Fraternal Order of Police. Throughout my career as a police officer, I've been involved in any number of dangerous situations, faced down people with guns and blades. But really to this day, one of the scariest things that I have to do is running lights and sirens to an emergency. You might think that running on tight urban or suburban streets is more scary, but actually it's often on the bigger roads where speeds get higher that we really get anxiety. We end up driving down the shoulder of a road. It means running over rumble strips that are hard enough to shake your fillings loose, or veering into the dirt. We're subject to all the debris that's in those shoulders, and that means we risk flat tires on our way to an emergency. That's not good. By just requiring people to keep right except to pass, you're naturally going to keep the left lane more open for our emergency responders. People become naturally inclined to move to the right when you have a law like this, which is generally the safest thing, especially when you do have people passing them. When everyone moves to the right, it also prevents us from having to split between cars on either side of us when we're in our emergency response mode. Something as simple as this can save precious seconds when we're responding to an emergency. There's always, I know, the concern about enforcement, but what we've seen with laws like this that are created to protect emergency responders, tow trucks, disabled vehicles on the side of the road, the creation of the law itself and a public information campaign that usually follows it has a positive effect. And as we have with our move over, slow down laws, we've definitely seen that effect as positive. I'll add a couple cents of my personal thoughts. I grew up in New Jersey, and you can say what you will about the Garden State, but they have a keep right except to pass law up there, and it does wonders to keep traffic flowing. I see it all the time when I head up the turnpike to visit my family. So personally, on behalf of the FOP, I urge a favorable report on House Bill 298. Thank you.
We do have a question from Delegate Long.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just curious, isn't it already law that an individual has to move out the way when emergency vehicles are already moving, when they're traveling to destinations? So I'm not sure how that's applicable.
It is, but what happens on, especially on faster moving roadways, the speed of sound and the visibility of our lights gets impacted. We sometimes have to get like right up behind somebody before they even realize we're there. We actually do training with this when we take our emergency vehicle operations course so that we can have some appreciation of this problem. And we'll run around the track often up at like Sykesville, Maryland Police Training Commission, and we'll put a car behind us running lights and sirens. and just recognize how difficult it is to see and hear when we're moving at those speeds. So having the cars already pushed to the right a little bit frees up just a little bit more leeway for us so that we don't have to kind of snowplow our way through the traffic.
Thank you for clarification.
No problem.
Delegate Guyton.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. I think we're all really concerned about safety on the highway. I remember the bill from last year. I'm trying to recall though, because I think at that time, maybe it was this bill, maybe it was a different bill that you had. We were discussing driver education and whether this was something that was in our Maryland driver education curriculum. Was that your bill?
I know this.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry, but it's a different bill. I apologize. Do you know if, because obviously, even if this is not in state law, it is the appropriate way to drive, right? I think we know that. Is it something that's listed in our driver education curriculum in Maryland that you should drive on the right, pass on the left?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I feel like that's maybe in there,
Just
but
like as a courtesy, but not like
yeah,
as
as
a
a
legal
courtesy,
component.
as a
Yeah,
courtesy.
I'm not aware of
Oh,
that,
okay.
but that would be great if it was.
Yeah, no, it would be a good thing to add. And I think my concern with it, because I absolutely agree with the premise, but my concern with it is so often people are already speeding up and pushing me off off the road when I'm in the left, going a little bit faster than that person in the right, really trying to pass, but not trying to pass at excessive speeds. And my concern with it, I kind of like to know what you think, is do you think that if we say this is law, that you have to be going faster in the left lane? Might it encourage people to run more of us off the road when they don't think we're going fast enough in that lane?
Yeah,
Do you
so-
have a response to that? Because that is my concern.
I do. That's a great point. Thank you for asking it. So there's actually studies that have been done because the majority of states actually have a law like this already in place across the country. And studies have been done that show that you get less like aggressive driving. You get smoother traffic flows. And I mean, I have the numbers in this giant binder if you're interested, but like the number of deaths due to reckless, and aggressive driving and things like that. And in Maryland, we hit like a record last year. And so that's why I'm concerned about it. But when this is the law in other states, and like Mr. Shire said, like in New Jersey where he's from, when people just automatically move over and that left lane's open, you just tend to see less aggressive driving and less of that sort of rude behavior.
That data, because I think that's really interesting and it might be something that we should see. Thank you.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for second bite of the apple. I promise this will be quick. Delegate Munoz, are there any points against the license assessed for this fine? I mean, you list the fines, but are there any points assessed?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for presenting the bill. My concerns are the fines. I've always been one to think that the same mission can be accomplished with just a citation or a warning. And I really have a lot of concerns, especially if it's a third offense and you're going to give someone a $250 ticket. Many people driving, going to work, a lot on their mind, and I've done it. Just forget to go over to the middle lane. $250, many people don't make that much in a day, for a day's work. So they're going to work and essentially they're not going to make any money that day. And it could be a very honest mistake. So that's kind of my concern with it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Would it be any possibility of offering citations and hopefully we could accomplish the same mission?
I would be definitely open to that. That portion is actually from the cross file in the Senate. And
Okay,
so
thank you.
I'm happy to amend it.
Delegate Davis.
I want to echo some of my colleagues' concerns. If I'm doing 65 on the Beltway in the left lane in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, it appears from the reading of this that I'm supposed to move over and let the guy with the 75 miles go by. And if I don't, I've violated the law.
I believe if you're just driving in the left lane, you're not passing anyone, regardless of the speed that you're going. you would be required to move over and not just sit in the left lane.
Even if
For-
you're driving the speed limit.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions, so thank you again, Delegate Munoz. And that concludes the bill hearing on HB 298. Is there a representative from Delegate Kerr's office here? Is that you? Great. We will turn to the bill hearing on HB 344. We're going to go a little out of order. Transportation Vision Zero Advisory Commission establishment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Matt Harrington. I'm here on Delegate Kerr's behalf. She sends her apologies. She's holed up testifying in another committee. This bill is HB 344. It will help further the implementation of Maryland's Vision Zero law, which was enacted in 2019, thanks to the work of this committee, and passed this committee unanimously, both chambers unanimously. Vision Zero sets a goal of no roadway fatalities or serious injuries by 2030. The Maryland Department of Transportation is making a good faith effort to implement the Vision Zero law, but unfortunately roadway deaths and injuries are still higher than before the pandemic. In 2022, 533 people were killed in crashes in Maryland. Nationally and in Maryland, roadway fatalities are growing, especially among pedestrians. Maryland has the unfortunate distinction of having a pedestrian fatality rate that is higher than 2/3 of other states. The intention with this bill is to bring more stakeholders to the table to solve the problem of traffic fatalities and serious injuries. This bill establishes a Vision Zero Advisory Commission to advise the governor and state agencies on traffic safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. The commission would be made up of a diverse group of stakeholders from state and local government, law enforcement, public health, pedestrian advocates, the trucking industry, and others. One of the most important functions that the commission will perform is to review safety deficiencies at crash hotspots. When multiple people die at a particular intersection or stretch of roadway, we owe it to their families and everyone who uses that road to make it safer. Delegate Kerr and I have been working with MDOT on a sponsor amendment to clarify that particular provision of the bill, and we should have that amendment ready for the committee soon. In conclusion, this Vision Zero Advisory Commission would help to make roads safer and save lives, and will do so without a fiscal note.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm still Marissa Valeri, still a Rockville City Council member, and I thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of the Mayor and Council, I want to sincerely thank Delegate Kerr for sponsoring this important legislation and truly being a hero for us in Rockville on Vision Zero. The Mayor and Council unanimously support HB 344. This legislation aligns with Rockville's own Vision Zero goals and action plan. A Vision Zero Advisory Commission composed of transportation, public health, and safety professionals would be a critical asset for Maryland's Vision Zero program. In Rockville, the majority of our streets in our Vision Zero high injury network are state roadways. All efforts to advance the state's Vision Zero program also advances the safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers in Rockville. Similar to the proposed legislation, our Department of Public Works staff provides updates and consults with the Rockville Transportation and Mobility Commission, the Rockville Pedestrian Advocacy Committee, of which I co-founded, and the Rockville Bicycle Advisory Committee. These groups provide unique insight and recommendations regarding the city's roadway improvements and the lived experience in Rockville, leading to a more robust and effective Vision Zero program. We expect a similar outcome from the proposed statewide commission. HB 344 is an important step forward, which will help the state meet its own Vision Zero goals and eliminate fatalities and serious injuries. We urge the committee to provide HB 344 with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for this bill. I noticed that there is favorable with amendment testimony from Disability Rights Maryland. they're requesting an amendment to add disability to the diversity requirements. Do you know if the delegate has spoken to them and if she's open to adding that?
We have not spoken with them, but I think she would regard that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Delegate Allen.
Chair, just briefly, I was checking the testimony, noticed some unfavorable testimony. When crafting this bill, do you know, was the UN Global 2020 or 2030 agenda consulted?
I don't believe so, Delegate.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, well, thank you both. Thanks for pinch hitting for Delegate Kerr. We have additional favorable in-person testimony from Bill George from the Maryland Municipal League, Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties, and Joshua Feldmark from Bike Maryland.
Hello, thank you to the chair. Thank you to members of the committee for having me today. Again, my name is Sarah Sample from Maryland Association of Counties, and we are testifying in support of this bill. Counties make really substantial investments when it comes to Vision Zero projects. These are the kind of projects that are cross-departmental. They can cross over different jurisdictions, and so it requires a lot of collaboration and coordination. And we think that this bill really appreciates that complexity, and we are looking forward to enthusiastically engaging on the commission. And so for those reasons, we would urge a favorable report on House Bill 344. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Bill George with the Maryland Municipal League here today in support of House Bill 344. As was mentioned by the sponsor panel, Rockville has a Vision Zero plan. They're not alone in municipal world. There are several other municipalities that have adopted Vision Zero plans for improvements on their roadways. And we really look forward to coordinating better with the state on their Vision Zero plan as well. This commission obviously has a municipal seat. We see that as a good faith recognition of local government as partners in this process. And as I testified before, roadway safety is one of the biggest things that we hear about from the constituencies in local government. Our local leaders are the ones who hear those complaints first. And so the concept of Vision Zero is something that municipalities can get behind 100%. You heard from us earlier on our priority bill, a little bit about our priority process. Vision Zero has actually been one that has been in the final cut for potential MML priority in years past. So it's something that is bubbling up to the level of real importance within the league. So we enthusiastically support the creation of this task force and ask for a favorable report.
One last time, I'm Joshua Feldmark from Bike Maryland. I know I normally start with a joke, but to be a little serious here for a second, I really wanted to thank this committee. Over the last several years, it has been this committee that has led the way and been the shining light for bike and pedestrian safety policy, not just in Maryland, although you are truly the ones who have made Maryland a leader. But across the country, and you've done it in a very well-reasoned, bipartisan way that if you could maybe think about training your colleagues across the street, we would love that. In 2019, we passed Vision Zero, which is really truly a paradigm shift in the way we think about traffic policy. Instead of talking about getting a certain class of folks from point A to point B as fast as possible, we're starting to talk about getting everybody where they're going safely. And then in 2022, you again, with not a lot of fanfare, passed the Implementation Act, and now this commission is the obvious next step. I think everyone around here looks at commissions and task force extraordinarily skeptically. And I will tell you that we think it is crucial that this committee, that this commission get stood up, because similar to the way that when we finally started looking at automobile safety in a comprehensive way and brought in the engineers and the traffic engineers and the designers to really start talking about it, which brought us crumpling steering columns and such. That's what needs to happen for Vision Zero. We need everybody around the table to figure out how we shift our policies. With that, I urge a favorable review.
Thank you. Mr. Fulmark, did you say everyone around here views commissions and task forces skeptically?
Did I? Yes, I did say that.
Okay, I don't know how you explain our bill load given that that position, but
Fair enough.
Are there any questions for this panel? Great, I do not see any, so thank you all very much for testifying again, and that concludes the bill hearing on HB 344. We will now turn to Delegate Healy and the Prince George's County delegation, HB 364, Traffic Control Device Monitoring Systems Authorization, PG 301-24. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. House Bill 364 is not completely unknown to this committee. I've submitted a statewide version of this for 2 years. The first year I withdrew it. The second year, we had extensive discussion in the motor vehicle subcommittee, and it became clear that there was not a statewide appetite for this. So I said then that I would ask it to come back as a local Prince George's County bill. And that is what we have here. It is very much unanimously supported by the Prince George's delegation and by our communities. The original bill from last year, I talked about some of the conditions we've had with people running stop signs no matter what we tried to do. And that has been a problem. And I had this bill already drafted for the delegation to consider back in September, October. But the week before Thanksgiving, there was a terrible, terrible tragedy in the town of Riverdale Park. 2 children walking to school in a 100% walking neighborhood school, crossing at the crosswalk at the intersection nearest Riverdale Elementary School with an adult with them. And the three people were hit. The 2 children were killed. The adult lived, but was in critical condition. And as far as I know, the accident is still under investigation. And if there had been the kind of electronic monitoring system that we're talking about, taking a picture, we would know if the truck that hit those children in the crosswalk had also run a stop sign. This bill is about taking the technology that we have used successfully to change behavior on speed cameras and allow the local governments where there is clearly a need to enact a bill that allows for electronic monitoring of these systems. It would affect not just stop signs, but also one-way streets, do not enter, and even crosswalks. It could be done. The signs could be put up. The technology exists. I did see, and it is completely supported for a request for local courtesy for this bill for Prince George's County only. I did see the testimony from State Highway. I think that we can work together. It is modeled on the speed camera legislation that we've had in place for a long time. That speed camera legislation that we have in Maryland began as a local courtesy bill in Montgomery County, and then after much discussion became statewide. And I think it's time now to take another step forward and protect the communities where there is such disregard for the stop signs and speeding on the small streets in these little towns. So with that, I will be happy to answer questions, but I would strongly urge a favorable report on behalf of Prince George's County delegation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? I do not see any. They must have a lot of late filed bills heading to rules on this committee. I don't know. We have other in-person favorable testimony. Anthony Ayers from the Minority Chiefs Alliance of Maryland, Mayor Selena Benitez from the city of Mount Rainier, and Linwood Alston from the Minority Chiefs Alliance of Maryland. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Looks like.
Oh, this is heavy, heavier than usual.
Mayor, should I do?
You're fine, Chief. You guys are so lucky always.
Good evening. Chair, members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I am Chief Anthony Ayers of College City Police Department and Vice President of the Minority Chiefs Alliance. I'm honored to testify in support of House Bill 364, Prince George's County Traffic Control Device Monitoring Systems Authorization PG 301-24. As the head of law enforcement for the town of College City, I strongly endorse this bill as it presents a proactive solution to enhance public safety and address the growing challenges faced by police departments across the state, particularly regarding staffing shortages. House Bill 364 provides authorization for the implementation of traffic control devices monitoring systems in Prince George's County. These systems offer alternative methods for monitoring traffic violations, thereby augmenting our efforts to maintain safe roads and enforce traffic laws. In the face of staffing shortages plaguing police departments statewide, innovating approaches like traffic control devices monitoring systems become indispensable tools. By leveraging technology, we can effectively address traffic concerns while optimizing our limited resources and manpower. Moreover, the implementations of these systems aligns with our commitment to promoting road safety and minimize traffic-related incidents within our communities. With automated monitoring, we can deter reckless driving behaviors, reduce accidents, and ultimately save lives. In conclusion, House Bill 364 presents a critical step towards enhancing public safety and mitigating the challenges posed by staff shortages in law enforcement agencies. I urge the committee to support this bill and prioritize the safety and well-being of our communities. Thank you for your attention.
So Selena Benitez, Mayor of the City of Mount Rainier, for the record, the highest density populated city in the whole entire state of Maryland with 2 elementary schools. So it's 1 mile. If you have not been to Mount Rainier, all of our city is a school zone. And even that, we do not feel safe. So Delegate Healy did spoke about a tragedy that we had in neighborhood city. And for us in Mount Rainier, it's not a matter of like, if it happened in Mount Rainier, it's when it'll happen. Because of the fact that people are driving too fast. We don't have cross guards at this point in our police department, as mighty as they are. You know, they serve as cross guards to be able to help, but they need the tools to make sure they're able to keep our kids safe. I'm also here as a mother of an 8-year-old who attends the public school system. So this is very close to my heart, knowing that we continue to encourage through our Vision Zero plan to make sure people walk and bike to school. But if we not provide the tools to our officers to be able to create safe space, we're asking them to literally put their life on the end. And this is not what I want. I don't want to be in a position where I get a call, just like the Mayor Riverdale did. And we all rally around him in order to make sure they knew that, you know, we're going to speak in support. As the Vice President of the Prince George's County Municipal Association, I'm also here on their behalf to let you guys know we strongly support HB 364. So I ask you to please do a favorable report on it. Thank you. Sorry, Chief.
Good afternoon, esteemed members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I am Chief Linwood Alston of the City of Mount Rainier Police Department and a founding member of the Minority Chiefs Alliance. I'm here to express my strong endorsement and support for House Bill 364. traffic control device monitoring systems. As the chief of police, I firmly believe that integrating these advanced systems is a crucial step towards enhancing public and improving public safety and improving our ability to enforce traffic regulations. Traffic control device monitoring systems provide law enforcement agencies with powerful tools to address traffic-related challenges effectively. I would like to highlight some of the reasons why I believe these systems are invaluable to our community. Enhanced traffic safety. These systems offer an additional layer of vigilance in monitoring and regulating traffic, significantly reducing accidents and promoting road safety. Traffic accidents are rising and a constant source of citizen complaints. With 535 traffic-related deaths in Maryland in 2023 alone, the magnitude of the problem goes beyond just fatal accidents, but is even higher in the number of collisions that lead to massive costs, injuries, wasted time, property damage, feelings of unsafety. Effective traffic enforcement. Automated monitoring systems and enforcement laws ensuring constant approach to law enforcement, filling the police resources, freeing up police resources for critical actions. This allows officers to focus on more complex issues that require human intervention. It's also a positive deterrent. I believe that adopting House Bill 364 aligns with our commitment to leveraging technology to enhance public safety and improve overall law enforcement capabilities. These systems complement the efforts of our police force, contribute to the creation of safe. I urge the committee to support this bill. The benefits of the systems bring a traffic safety and law enforcement aligned to our shared mission to protect and serve our community. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this panel? I do not see any, so thank you all again.
Thank you.
We have, if they're in the waiting room, we have some virtual, in-person, one-person virtual testimony from Ron Weiss. Please go ahead, sir.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of HB 364. I'm Ron Weiss. I live in Fort Washington. This bill will help protect our school children, senior citizens like me, and all of us from being killed by reckless drivers. As Delegate Healy mentioned, students have lost their lives last year near their schools. We must do everything we can so this doesn't happen again. HB 364 will help our county keep our residents of all ages safe. I urge your favorable report on HB 364. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Is there any question? Are there any questions for this witness? Okay, I do not see any. So that concludes the bill hearing on HB 364. We will now turn to the majority leader, HB 356, school bus stops, monitoring cameras, and safety measures.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with your indulgence, I just have a simple black and white Xerox that I'll hand out. Okay, good afternoon, colleagues. Delegate David Moon for the record with House Bill 356. This bill is a repeat of one we passed last year out of the House by an overwhelming margin, and it reforms the rules regarding how we handle photo enforcement of school bus violations. And so if you're unfamiliar with this, this is a law enforcement technology that's deployed in Prince George's, Montgomery, Carroll, Cecil, Anne Arundel, Howard, and a few other places where a vendor has put at no cost to the counties, I believe, in most instances, a piece of technology that takes photos of vehicles passing stopped school buses that have the stop arm with blinking lights out. So what this bill does is it creates a scenario where we're doing a warning on the first offense in a very specific circumstance. So I want to be very clear, lest anyone be confused. It's going to sound at first blush as though we are taking a step away from safety of students at school bus stops. But in fact, it's counterintuitive, but the exact opposite is going on, that the status quo of leaving this program in place without any alterations is in fact the thing that is exposing our school kids to danger. So why is that? If you look at the handout I've given here, you'll see one of the most confusing scenarios we've created through our policy. If you are behind a school bus and you do not stop, you're going to get a ticket. That technology will be responsible for you getting a $250 ticket. Now, if you are, however, not behind the bus, you are on the other side of the road traveling in the opposite direction. Whether you get a ticket depends on how that road is engineered. If you're traveling in opposite directions and there's a median in the middle of that road, you do not have to stop for a school bus on the other side of the road. If there is not a median in that road, you must stop for that school bus on the opposite side that you are not behind, or you are going to get a $250 ticket. Now, that might not sound confusing, but we have come to discover through the data that in places like Montgomery County, some of these bus stops are located on 7-lane highways. And so you're expecting a car 7, 6, 7, or 8 lanes away from a school bus stop all the way on the other side to stop, or else you're getting a $250 ticket. The photos you see here are some of the top grossing locations in Montgomery County, Maryland. Mr. Chair has the #1 spot, which yields $700,000 in tickets a year from that River Road location that I just handed out. The one on the reverse is from my district in downtown Silver Spring, and it's responsible for about $400,000 of tickets a year. So we have a policy question in front of us. Are these bus stops dangerous or not? You can see in the photo what's there. The common scenario is it's a 6 or 8 lane state highway with no median, and there's an apartment building there. So the bus is pulling up right next to the apartment building. The kids get on and off. And if you look at the reports that are included in your testimony, nobody's crossing the street. In fact, Comar says the school systems cannot put a bus stop in a scenario where a kid has to cross over 4 lanes of traffic. You tell me, committee, is this a $250 ticket scenario or not? I have this bill and the bill coming before you next, and a third local bill from Montgomery County that present you 3 non-mutually exclusive ways for handling this. We can say these are dangerous bus stops and ban these school systems from putting these stops on these undivided 6 or 7, 8 lane highways. That will stop this problem. It's also a big inconvenience to the families who live in these apartment towers who are telling us that they do not believe these stops are dangerous. This is going to be the policy choice for this committee. If you do not believe these stops are dangerous, then you can go with the approach we went with last year, which is to issue a warning or some other waiver of a ticket for these multi-lane scenarios. I have to tell you, this is not an easy problem to solve. Do you make all these parents move, or do you just keep issuing these tickets? The data is showing the drivers don't know they're supposed to stop. So if you believe this is dangerous, we should not leave the status quo because thousands of cars are blowing past every year. The third option I presented via local legislation says, okay, what if we take this money, which right now just goes into the county general funds, and what if we start using it to improve these bus stops? If we build medians at these bus stops, the tickets under state law do not exist because you do not have to stop if there is a median. That's the first bill and a little bit of the second bill. I'm happy to dive into details and answer any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for trying to make this safer. I really appreciate that. I'm just curious about something you said. If it's dangerous, you move the stop, but why isn't there an option to pull through the parking lot?
It's possible. And in fact, if you look at the reverse on the Silver Spring bus stop location, there's even like a little service pull in,
Yeah.
depending on the length of the bus and the time of the day, whether it's rush hour or not, and it's accessible. I've been told that sometimes the buses pull in there, but it's not a guarantee. And it doesn't solve the fundamental problem, which is if we do a very surgical analysis, we might be able to problem shoot each of these locations. But as a global policy proposition, and more counties are adopting this technology without knowledge that they're authorizing this opposite lane ticket. Just so you understand the scale of it, there have been years where 50, 60, 70% of all of the tickets in Montgomery County are coming from the opposite lane scenario. We have been sold on the concept that drivers are not stopping behind the bus and we need to do something about it, when in fact, most of the tickets and revenue appears to be from drivers who are getting tagged in that confusing opposite lane scenario.
Okay, now I appreciate that and support this, and I think it's a good idea. I just would also like to see us require them to pull into the parking lot, but I thank you for your efforts in this.
Delegate Clayton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill. I do remember it and your diagrams from last year very well, so it's stuck in my mind. What I don't remember, and I apologize if they were here, was the level of opposition that we see to this bill on this bill this year, and particularly from law enforcement and anyone associated with schools saying that this is actually going to put kids in danger. So that worries me, with all due respect to our wonderful majority leader. That is concerning to me. Can you address?
I can absolutely address that. It's why we were elected to take tough votes sometimes. I hate to say it. This is one. I mean, I've been at this for 6 or 7 years now on this same issue. When my local papers put up a list of the worst offending bus stops, and I said, "Oh my God, they're all in my district. What's wrong with my drivers?" I looked at the satellite image and I said, "Is it the drivers, or is there something structural about what's going on here?" It took me 6 years to get the courage to put my name on the bill to fix this, because as you know, look at the subject matter we're talking about and look at what the people are going to say about the bill. But again, I've dived into the data. They refused to release the data for many years. And when I finally got it, it validated exactly what I thought. So if you care about the kids, you think these are dangerous bus stops, well, then you tell me, should we leave everything the same if year over year, 2,000 cars are blowing by that bus stop? Well, if it's about the money, then you're going to say, that's fine. Let them keep blowing by. Those kids may or may not get hit, but we're getting the money. I've asked 3 questions. Should we move the bus stops? Or alternatively, should we take that money and build a median at that bus stop generating $700,000 in fines a year and stop those tickets from happening? Or do we go the third route and say, these are not dangerous bus stops? Again, some of these are more politically palatable conclusions than others, but they all get at the same conclusion. In my ideal world, we build medians, we take the revenue, and we engineer the safest bus stops possible. But if you look through the testimony, you'll see in between the lines here, SHA is saying, "Oh, you're going to make us spend all this money building medians." There's little talk about the revenue pinch on some of the jurisdictions. The vendor, of course, is going to be concerned about this. And again, in the meantime, nobody's moving the stops. Nobody's doing anything to make them safer, and the money keeps flowing. And I've been 7 years at this. Please put me out of my misery.
No, thank you. And I appreciate that very, very, very much. I haven't been here quite 7 years, but there are some bills that feel like I have had them for at least 7 years. So I appreciate that very much. And I love your other 2 alternatives. I'm just not sure I love this one.
Sure.
So
I totally understand. And,
yeah.
And I'm frankly, I have to say though, if you like the alternative moving the stops, I've tried to wrestle with this question, which is why I thought it was important for you to look at the photo. Is it fair for us to say those people that live in that apartment cannot have a school bus stop put there? They've got to go 5 blocks away because of us being too scared to adjust the policy on this. Okay. You know, so either we make SHA and the county start building some of these improvements, or we take a tough vote the other way.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I have one more quick Has there ever been a child who has been hit or injured in the far lanes?
So again, the incident data does not suggest that the opposite lane scenario is an issue. Comar again prohibits putting bus stops on a 4+ lane road where you're expecting the child to cross those multiple lanes of traffic. If you look at, along these years, one of the things we did was make Montgomery County produce a report analyzing the top 10 offending stops. So number one, the stops are mostly the same. The numbers keep being bad or getting worse. And if you look at the detailed analysis from the Montgomery County report that was put out just this December of 2023, they don't think the stops are dangerous. They said they actually sent people out, and the conclusions are the same. We observed the stop. Everyone behind the bus, the River Road one, number one in the county, Chair's district. It says everyone behind the bus stopped. Nobody on the other side of the road stopped. None of the children attempted to cross the lanes of traffic, right? So again, I ask you, what's the right thing for us to do given these facts?
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I agree that this is like greatly confusing to drivers and that they don't. And you forgot the other scenario, which is the median goes along and then there's a break in the median. Right. And then that, if you don't stop and the school bus is stopping there, then you're in violation. So, so that's a problem. But I do have a couple of questions. One is, you said that are you saying that this first bill we're considering, I understand you have some alternatives, but the first bill we're considering here, HB 356, makes it safer? I don't understand how it makes it safer.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, that one is not, I wouldn't say that makes it safer. HB 356 is the option where you've decided that these are not in fact dangerous bus stops. And so the $250 ticket is not warranted.
Okay. Okay.
Now you might come to a different conclusion that they are dangerous bus stops, in which case you should move the bus stops.
Okay. Because, people are not obeying it and it's
correct.
Not safe.
The law is not being obeyed.
Right.
So whether we believe in this structure or not,
right.
The existence of the vendor and these tickets is not causing the situation to go away.
Right. And then another question, if I could, sort of a follow-up. So you say 4 lanes or more, 4 lanes or more.
On an undivided highway.
On an undivided highway.
Coming from the
I understand the median highway is a different situation. The highway with the median is a different situation. But 4 lanes on an undivided highway. So that's not, okay, a couple questions. One, including a turning lane?
Yes, so it does include a turning lane or a reversible lane. The number of lanes, again, this is something you can take a look at. If you look at the top 10 offending locations, I do believe they are all in the 5+ category. I put the bill about banning the bus stops in the 5+ lane category since Comar already talks about 4 lanes.
Okay.
The bill from last year, HB 356, says 4 lanes. Why? Because I didn't want to change a bill we had already passed.
Okay, because I'm just, have you given some thought to maybe inclement weather? 4 lanes isn't that much. It's 2 on each side. If there were inclement weather, for example, that might cause a problem. It might actually shrink down to like a 2-lane road, and then that would be slippery. And then, you could see a scenario where they would slide off and hit. But you're open to changing that number, I take it.
Yeah, and let me just give you a little more color. If you look at the fiscal notes at the 2 bills, you'll see a little bit of interesting detail in there. Some of the counties that operate these cameras say we don't have any bus stops in this posture. And so it really begs the question, how many counties are there with these cameras that are putting bus stops on these 6 or 7 lane undivided highway scenarios? And it might be Montgomery and a handful of stops in some other counties. This always started as a local bill and only expanded this way because of the rule that these citations are uniform statewide district court citations. And so we attempted to change this just for Montgomery, but we're stopped when we did that. So now it's a statewide bill. And I see St. Mary's had a question. We are happy. I already have an amendment drafted to exclude counties that haven't implemented it, because I think St. Mary's is in that posture.
Thank you.
Delegate Terrasso, round two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize if this is for the other bill. I think, but just sort of back to whether you want to do this or prohibit bus stops and make those people walk. I think if you can't have a bus stop there, you really shouldn't have kids walking along there to get to a different location. So it's almost like a required bus stop, but moved in the
And they
parking
could,
lot.
the easiest way would be if the particular stop, it's feasible to build a median there. I mean, it's, you know, in all the years we've done this, I'm looking, you know, some of the stops I flagged, they were there 6 years ago. They were there on the list last year. And so, you know, $400,000 a year on East-West Highway, we're at 2.5 million in fines in the 6 years I've been asking people to take a look at that stop. It's an apartment building and a 6-lane highway. Put a freaking median there and we won't, you know, I won't be back here bothering you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. Don't go far. We have a panel of unfavorable in-person witnesses. Delegate, you can go back a row, just don't leave the room. We have Daniel Rodriguez from the Anne Arundel County Police Department, John Willems, Maryland Association of Boards of Education, Stephen Randazzo, Bus Patrol America, and Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties. And please just go ahead when you're ready. Sarah, we can just rotate you in when it's your turn. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. To the Honorable Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, thank you for allowing me to be here today to testify. Thank you for taking the time to allow me to once again speak on this legislation. The Anne Arundel County Police Department stands in opposition to House Bill 356 as written. The current law, Transportation Article 21706.1, already permits a jurisdiction to issue a civil citation or a warning. To be clear, our firm opposition to this law is in order to maintain the safety of our children. As previously stated during our opposition to similar legislation during last year's session, our children don't know the differences and dangers of a 4-lane highway without a median. One child lost to a motorist who fails to obey the law and strike a child is absolutely unacceptable. Since the inception of the automated bus camera program, we have seen several video examples from right here in Maryland of children nearly being struck in the exact situation that this law is trying to mandate first-time warnings for. The law related to stopping for a school bus is clearly defined in the transportation article. It is explained in the MVA handbook, which is used to study for driver's testing. It is also taught during driver's education classes. We reiterate, this is a serious traffic violation. If the violation was witnessed on view by a police officer, the penalty is up to $570 and 3 points. In conclusions, there are many other issues associated with this legislation that do warrant discussion, such as all of the things that Delegate Moon mentioned. Currently, there is no existing mechanism to accurately track warnings across jurisdictions to comply with such a mandate, and there is nothing within this legislation that would permit a citation if an egregious violation was observed on video by a law enforcement agency. One thing remains clear. Requiring warnings in these situations would be detrimental towards the goal of modifying behavior for a serious traffic violation, which could take a child's life. For these reasons, the Anne Arundel County Police Department opposes House Bill 356 and requests an unfavorable committee report. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Adrian Pugh with Anne Arundel County Police Department Special Operations Section. And just, I started the automated enforcement program at Anne Arundel County Police Department. And just to clarify, these citations are not automatic citations. After the artificial intelligence at the vendor views what it believes are potential violations, they're then sent to the police department, and actual humans are reviewing these violations. And we go through a pretty stringent 10-step process to determine whether or not a violation is in fact a good violation. So these aren't just generating tickets as they see them. And only speaking to Anne Arundel County, of our top 15 locations, 9 of them were on these types of highways, undivided highways with 4 or more lanes. Our highest location, we had 552 citations at our worst location. So the variation between jurisdictions, I think, is great. Just really depending on the way your roadways are set up and whether your highways are divided or not. That is all I have.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Williams, representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education, here today to testify in strong opposition to House Bill 356 as drafted. May believes very strongly that this bill would weaken a critical tool in ensuring student safety, and that tool is facilitated by the cameras that are provided on the exterior of school buses. But the tool is also, as the officer pointed out, one of enforcement based on an officer viewing the violation. And so if there were no cameras on these buses, we still have serious concerns with, as this flyer points out from the Howard County government, consider the cost. And it clearly describes the highways, 5 lanes without a median and 5 lanes with a median. And without the median, you must stop. What is a divided highway? Clearly explained on the front and back of a little flyer that every Maryland can understand. Could signage, could public education materials be improved? Yes. But this bill would force school systems and law enforcement to weaken the current state of protections by issuing warnings to first offenders rather than the citation. And we are deeply concerned that that could, unintended as it would be, send a message that it is in some instances okay to pass a bus with its lights on, with the stop sign out, and with children boarding or disembarking from the school bus. And for those reasons, we urge an unfavorable on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I'm Steve Randazzo from Bus Patrol America. Thank you for having me. Bus Patrol is one of the providers that services a number of communities across the state of Maryland. We service 9 counties, rural, suburban, and more urban in nature, including Anne Arundel, Carroll, Cecil, Charles, Howard, Montgomery, Prince George's, Queen Anne's, and Somerset. Our mission is to make the ride to and from school safer for all children. And we have some concerns about this piece of legislation. We've actually met with Majority Leader Moon a number of times and have tried to collaborate, and we're just the provider in the process, but wanted to stand in opposition with the folks here. Want to say that Majority Leader Moon has tremendous integrity, and we understand that his heart is in the right place, and this is a difficult issue to navigate. Sometimes in government, just the hardest thing to do is just build something into the street. But I think that's really what's called for here. Traffic calming measures, adding crossing guards, potentially looking at moving school bus stops. That's what Bus Patrol does uniquely. When we operate a program on behalf of a county, we might be on upwards of over 1,000 school buses. We provide the community with data on where the most troublesome school bus stops are on a monthly basis. That data should be used. The data making, the data-driven decision making through looking at where the most dangerous stops are supposed to inform more thoughtful route planning. So with that, hope that we can continue to collaborate with Majority Leader Moon, because again, heart's in the right place, but this bill would weaken child safety at the end of the day. Providing law enforcement that tool to be able to have that discretion is sort of the bedrock of this law. We urge your opposition.
Great. We'll just see this. Sarah, just wait 1 second. We'll just see if there's any questions for this panel, and then we can pull you up. Any questions? Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it goes without saying, although I'll say it, that every single person in this room cares about safety and children's safety. That is foundational. I hear your opposition, but you know, as my father used to say, thicket right here. We have regulations that say you can't put a school bus stop on a 4-lane highway where children are crossing the road. So we're in a situation where children are not crossing the road. Let's make that clear. We're in a situation where the children are getting on the bus here. 4 or 5 lanes over, cars are going here. There are thousands and thousands of dollars that are being brought in over here when it's not a safety issue because the children aren't crossing the road. So I'm looking to you to help us figure this out. Where do we go? Because we can't just leave it as it is. It's just untenable. So help us figure out what to do. Isn't that so?
May I just say one thing, Delegate? Really appreciate and respect your opinion. But to correct the record, we could provide you with hundreds of examples in a given year where children cross over 4-lane roads. And sometimes that might not necessarily be because they live on that side of the road. But what we know is that kids are kids. Kids might actually be just dropped off from a parent's car across the street and they're forced to run across the street. Sometimes they're hanging out with a friend or they're coming from a restaurant or what have you. So I just want to make sure we're very clear here that, and happy to meet with you in your office, children cross 4-lane roads every day in the state of Maryland and beyond.
Mr. Chair, if I may. But isn't it so that the regulations say that a bus stop may not be placed on a 4-lane highway where children are crossing the road?
Delegate, just to clarify, it would be the school system's responsibility to not design a bus stop, say going north on New Hampshire Avenue, intended for students living on the west side of New Hampshire Avenue to cross and board the bus northbound on New Hampshire Avenue. That is not to say that a child is not has not spent the night before with their uncle and aunt and is running across the street to board the bus the next morning. And so again, to the point, the bus stop may not be designed, is prohibited from being designed to pick up students crossing 4 or more lanes, but it is not to say it doesn't happen.
I appreciate your hypothetical, but I implore you all, come see me. Let's figure out how to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I follow up? I think back to what Sergeant Pugh testified to earlier. We have the authority as the jurisdiction to look at the violation that has occurred and all of the violations that are being brought up here that are in question. The law enforcement agency does not have to issue citations in those cases. They can issue nothing because of the thoughts that some of the things that we're discussing in this room, or they can come up with a system to issue warnings. That there's nothing in the law that requires a citation to be issued. But to that point, we're a new program in Anne Arundel County. We have buses and we're just starting to expand to speed and red lights. But with our implementation of the bus patrol program, one of the key things we wanted to do in transparency was to analyze those locations that we knew, and this is on public record. We put it out. These are the top 15 locations. We just put out our annual report in Anne Arundel County. We are meeting on February 28th with the stakeholders from the school board to go over all of these things that are being discussed. So I can't speak for the rest of the state. I can only speak for the Anne Arundel County Police Department and the Anne Arundel County. I'm not speaking for the schools, but how we partner with them. We are looking at all of these things because we should not have a bus stop in a location that's generating tens of thousands of tickets. We should be thinking of some other way to do that. So I can tell you in Anne Arundel County, we are doing that. We are already working with our partners to try to eliminate those locations because we're obviously not changing behavior if we're having 10,000 citations. But to mandate that we have to write a warning in certain situations is not good business. Because again, what if we witness an egregious violation? There's no traffic on the road, and we've seen these things where somebody blows through and a kid was crossing in that area. We would be handcuffed to the point where we could not issue a citation. So I think the fact that there is human review of the AI that Sergeant Pugh talked to, we already have the power and authority to do that. Whether jurisdictions are not doing that is probably another question, but working with the stakeholders to find solutions, you're not going to hear any disagreement from the Anne Arundel County Police Department that we don't think that that's conversations that should be had.
Okay, Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question's for the gentleman here on the end. You had mentioned you are the provider. What does that really mean?
Great question. So At Bus Patrol, what we do is we're more of an administrative service. So we outfit the buses. We enter into a partnership with the school district, the county, and law enforcement. And typically what we do is the systems are actually pretty expensive, you might imagine. So what we do is we're in the business of trying to make the road safer for all kids, regardless of where you live in the community. Your zip code shouldn't determine your level of safety. So what we do is what's called a full fleet deployment. So in a place like Montgomery County, Prince George's, and other, we're on upwards of over 1,000 school buses, every bus, every child, because it's the safety equity piece of it. And then what we do is we install the systems, we provide ongoing support and maintenance around the equipment, and then the cameras pick up a violation, what might be an alleged violation, and then that gets sent to law enforcement. Law enforcement only makes the decision about whether to issue a citation. And then we do take care of some back end work. We'll mail on behalf of the law enforcement agency. We'll serve as a payment processor and do some court sort of administrative service work. But in no way are we making the decision about whether to issue a citation. Just all of the support work so that everyone else can do their jobs efficiently and that the program can be run smoothly.
So then a follow-up question, are you the provider for the 2 locations that Delegate Moon had provided to us?
Yes, sir. We are the provider
Okay,
for
so-
Montgomery County.
So, and he had mentioned fines in the neighborhood. I don't know if fines is the correct word, but money collected in the amounts of 750,000, 450,000. Do you mind me asking you how much of that money goes to the provider?
Yes, sir. Just to correct the record, and again, Delegate Moon, all the integrity of the world, the numbers are highly inaccurate. So I'd be happy to correct the record on what those numbers actually are. It's several $100,000 less than that. That is the top spot, and I understand that that's a concern. And frankly, we should have a conversation about moving that stop, but we're the provider. We can't make that decision for the school. I'd have to double check with you on the contract term, but it's somewhere around a split, like a 50-50, something like that.
And Delegate Moon is a man of integrity.
Yes.
And I am inclined to believe his numbers. Thank you.
Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Williams, just really quickly, where would one in Howard County see or receive that flyer?
Well, I believe that one would see it at an MVA office. I don't know that we're distributing them at the schools in principals' offices, but we could certainly talk about that. Certainly driver's education programs, which, as you know, are all privately administered now in Maryland. And so I would imagine there are any number of points of access for the general public to this information. But again, on these roads with 4 or more lanes without a median, you can see, I think, the value in signage, even electric signage, to make it clear to drivers that if a bus is stopped and unloading or loading students on this highway, you must stop. And
Okay,
if every
thank
time you
you.
got off the Beltway on New Hampshire Avenue, you saw that sign, I think you'd be a lot more likely to stop going in either direction.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions for this panel? Okay, let's bring up Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties.
All right, thank you to the chair. Thank you to members of the committee for having me today. Again, I'm Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties, and so I will be brief. I think we can probably all agree that it's not ideal to have a school bus stop on a highway, so we certainly recognize that. The violations that we're talking about, we've also heard today, those penalties are set by the state, and counties have the authority to enforce penalties related to those violations. We have found that if you get a citation, for the most part, people are not doing it again because the recidivism rates are pretty low. And removing that enforcement mechanism, we think, would be unwise, especially when we do already have the ability to send a warning or a citation. And just what I would also add is MACO's not going to be weighing in on it, but it does sound like the potential to be moving the locations might actually be able to address the root causes that we're seeing when discussing with this bill that we're on right now.
because it would be addressing things that are further upstream before the bus stop is even in that location. And I think that could be potential to deal with this just because we don't have all jurisdictions that are doing this right now. We have a number that are looking to do it. But yeah, if we were able to get ahead of that, that could be useful. But for this particular bill, we are urging unfavorable. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? You said there was a low rate of recidivism
Yes.
after people get that first ticket?
Yes,
So people get something in the mail that tells them what they did was wrong and then they don't do it again?
that's what we're finding. But a lot of the continuing violations tend to be new people.
Right. So they get a letter in the mail that says they did something wrong and then they don't do it again? Generally?
The high percentage do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Great. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 356. As we turn to HB 540, also from Leader Moon, I just want to remind people at 4 o'clock, we sometimes get a little tech gremlin who comes in and messes with us. If that happens, we have sort of a 2-minute sort of reset we have to do. We think we know how to do it. I should say, think we know how to do it. So everyone just sit tight if that happens during this or the next bill. And if anybody has a bill to file, because today is the deadline to drop, thank you, in the hopper, the chief clerk is here. If you have a blue back, so you can go back into the office and take care of that.
I'm losing
All right,
audience, Mr. Chair.
We will now turn to the bill hearing on HB 540, Delegate Moon, Education School Bus Stops Prohibited Locations.
Thank you for having me back, Mr. Chair, colleagues. This is House Bill 540, the famous other option that I mentioned, whereas the other bill contemplated just sending a warning for people in that opposite lane scenario. House Bill 540 is my attempt to throw a lifeline to the stakeholders behind me and allow them to move the stops in question on 5-lane undivided highways, or use a crossing guard or some technology that allows the bus driver to operate the traffic control lights, much like a bus rapid transit vehicle. The technological option, I'm told, is not capable at the moment. So I just want to be clear about that, even though it's in the bill. So functionally, you're talking about a bill that asks the school systems to move these stops off of these multi-lane highways, or to deploy a crossing guard if they're going to keep that stop there. I think it is an eminently reasonable approach to the problem. It does require a little bit of work on the part of the counties and school systems to take a look at this. But I will leave you with my other thought on this, which is doesn't make me perfectly happy, because it does beg the question about why can't we actually build the medians to allow the parents to have a bus stop in front of where they live. So with that, happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. We do have in-person unfavorable testimony from John Willems, Maryland Association of Boards of Education.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Willems representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. Just urge consideration of rejecting this approach because of the, I believe, unprecedented nature of legislating that school systems would have to reject any bus stop on a road with 5 or more lanes. We don't believe these stops are unsafe at present, and are very concerned that in the alternative, requiring that those bus stops be converted into bus stops back in the neighborhoods could involve much less safe scenarios. Cars parked on both sides of the roads, difficulty in turning, requiring 3-point turns to turn the bus around. And so there's a real, I think, kind of clear and present risk that the alternatives to the bus stops on the highways with 5 or more lanes would be less safe than the current bus stops. And for that reason, request an unfavorable on this bill as well. Thank you.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Deep breaths. What is the solution, sir? There's clearly a problem here. From the school board's position, what is or could be the solution? Because there's a problem.
The problem in that
The problem that the delegate has presented
is that hundreds of people are receiving tickets for behavior that I want to presume they don't know is illegal behavior. And so MABE's proposed solution would be expanded and enhanced public education of drivers so that they understand that if there is not a median, they must stop when a bus is even 2 lanes away, heading in the other direction with its lights on and with its stop sign out, and children are boarding or unboarding the bus.
But I find it difficult that you seem to be defending a driver when you should be defending our children. Isn't that so?
No.
I guess I do have a question. So wouldn't a really effective targeted PR campaign to send each person who violates this a note letting them know what the law is? Okay. Delegate Terrassa?
The warning first?
I'm just saying, send them a note that says what they did was wrong. Like you said, you think most of the people don't know what they're doing is a violation of the law. That's what you just said. So
I presume that to be the case with some of the people who are passing the bus while facing the bus heading in the opposite direction. We have an alarming number of people. If on River Road you have 1,000 people who have passed the bus facing the bus, you have a couple hundred people who have passed the bus coming right up behind it while kids are loading and unloading. And so it's a real concern that the unintended consequence of weakening the protections with regard to these bus stops would send the message that it is in some instance okay to pass a bus with its lights on and its sign out.
okay, but you suggested a PR campaign, so I'm asking you about a PR tool of sending a note to the people who violate it to let them know the law.
Yes, but not instead of sending them a ticket.
Okay, Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And did I hear you say that the bus stops in the neighborhoods, like on a cul-de-sac or a small street, are more dangerous? Those bus stops are, so we should be putting them out on the highway? Is that your argument?
They certainly could be less safe. Bus stops are intended to be designed to be in areas that are as obvious to oncoming drivers as possible. Visibility and with the greatest distance, 1/4 mile apart. So there are current COMAR regs that are intended to establish safe bus stops.
So your argument is that they're safer on a 4 or 5 lane highway than in a neighborhood at a street corner?
They could be less safe if you force the bus to move into a neighborhood where they were required to turn around or back up, which putting a school bus in reverse is something that we really strive to avoid in designing bus stops.
Do you have any data? Do you have any data indicating that it's safer to have kids on a 4 or 5 lane highway than in the neighborhoods?
We would certainly have anecdotal evidence that students entering the street from between parked cars on the side of the street is a real risk and has resulted in fatalities and serious injuries. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was not going to ask any questions, but I do have one question, and that is how you view the idea of just taking the money that has been raised over these last few years, that amount of money and putting a median strip in the middle of that road. Is that something that the school boards would object to?
Delegate, absolutely not. It's also something over which we have absolutely zero control, right? So
you have an opinion. Would you support that? Would you support a legislation that would mandate that?
I would say on behalf of MABE, representing all 24 boards of education, I think you're asking about the installation of medians on roads with 4 or more lanes if there's going to be a bus stop on that road. And that is something we would have to take a look at. Again, that would be a position on an infrastructure kind of development.
I'm just asking you, would you take that back to your group and ask them if they would support that kind of solution? Because we have heard enough to hear that there is a problem. And we've heard that you object to several of the solutions that have been offered. So is this a solution that you would be able to support? That's the question I'm asking you to take back to your board.
Absolutely, we'll do that, Delegate.
Thank you so much.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Delegate Healy was asking, but my question is more germane to the bill. The bill also says, it says you should not be located on a, on any highway with 5 or more undivided traffic lanes, but it also gives some options. And this, I think you may have some control over. One of the options is you could do that if there's a school crossing guard posted at the school bus stop, or if there's a traffic control device that maintains a red signal while someone is crossing the road, which we have in many places around Montgomery County. So what about those two options? Do you support those options in lieu of moving the bus stop?
No, and just to be clear, we have no control over either of those. We don't have control over the hiring of crossing guards generally either. That is a local government and local law enforcement service provided to school systems. And so those are not our employees, and that is not a service that we provide. Similarly, the electrical and infrastructure work to install red lights that were timed in such a way that when the bus was stopped with its lights on and its arm out, that there would be some type of red light across the 4 or 5 lanes simultaneous with that. That would be an infrastructure project that would be far beyond the scope. Would a school system want to collaborate with a county government if that were being pursued? Absolutely, but outside the scope of what a school system could do under our current policy and funding and development authority.
So let me put this another way. If some of the monies, the enormous amount of monies that are being collected for this violation, if they were put toward those safeguards, would you support that?
I would say yes, but full disclosure, some of the revenue from these bus citations is actually supporting the installation of other cameras, the cameras on the inside of the school buses that we find incredibly valuable with regard to observing bus driver and student behavior, to address student discipline and staff activities on those buses. So school systems are in many instances or certain instances benefiting substantially in other ways from the revenue generated from these citations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Willems. That
Thank
concludes
you.
the bill hearing on HB 540. We will now turn to Delegate Kerr, HB 212, Vehicle Laws, Noise Abatement Monitoring Systems Authorization. And again, Delegate Kerr, there's a chance in 2 minutes here our system's going to shut down, so you've been warned.
Okay. I guess cut me off if that happens, and I'll just pause. Well, first of all, I just want to say my apologies for not being here earlier. I was testifying before another committee and got a lot of questions on that legislation. But good afternoon. For the record, I'm Delegate Kerr here to present House Bill 212. This is enabling legislation for Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Prince George's counties to address a growing quality of life concern caused by overly loud vehicles. The disruptive sound from these vehicles' engines and/or illegally modified exhaust systems can be heard blocks away and is disturbing the peace of neighborhoods across the state. Under current federal and state laws and regulations, it is illegal to buy, sell, or drive any vehicle that is louder than 80 decibels when it is being operated. And that's been the case in Maryland since 1988. It's also illegal to modify your vehicle's muffler to be louder than the manufacturer's settings, yet more and more people are breaking the law. For context, a normally operating vehicle is typically less than 55 decibels. And for comparison, a leaf blower that's about 50 feet away is about 75 to 85 decibels. So our state's legal threshold of 80 decibels is pretty loud. Enforcement against lawbreakers is difficult for police. Officers aren't typically equipped with decibel meters, and in many jurisdictions, they just, are not seeking to increase traffic stops. So the solution that I'm proposing is noise cameras. Noise cameras work like a red light camera. The device contains a video camera and a decibel reader, which is continuously monitoring the adjacent road. When a loud vehicle drives past, the device registers the decibel level and the camera records a brief video, including sound, and snaps a photo of the vehicle's license plate. If there's no qualifying event, the noise camera automatically deletes all recordings a few seconds later. There are a number of safeguards built into the technology. The software underlying the cameras are trained using machine learning to recognize the difference between different types of loud sounds by monitoring the noise pattern. For instance, the software and the cameras can differentiate between like a souped up engine or a legally modified muffler, and say a gunshot or a jackhammer or an ambulance siren or a plane flying overhead or somebody blaring their car stereo. So in other words, the camera isn't just detecting any loud noise. It is really trained to pick up two specific, very loud noises, and just ticketing in those instances. There are other safeguards built into the bill as well to prevent false citations. So the video footage for every qualifying event must be reviewed by a real person who works for the local government. And I've submitted a sponsor amendment to the committee that would limit tickets to being issued only when a vehicle is at least 5 decibels over our state's legal threshold. So in this case, 85 decibels. For a first offense, only a warning can be issued. For subsequent offenses, a citation of up to $70 would be sent to the vehicle owner. No points can be assessed. These are the same as if a police officer would pull someone over. And the owner can either pay the citation or contest it in the court, same as we do for other types of automated technology. Both California and New York have passed legislation to allow pilot programs of this technology, and numerous cities around the world are currently using it. New York City has the largest noise camera program in the United States. It's been in operation for more than 2 years, and they are rapidly expanding their program. Their very first camera, which they installed more than 2 years ago, caught over 500 violators. This past summer, they expanded to 10 cameras, and they have approved the installation of a total of 25 cameras by next year. They plan to get up to 100 cameras by 2028. London and other communities in England are also using noise cameras. In the first year in London, almost 10,000 vehicles were caught at just 4 locations. Notably, nearly 300 of those citations, the vehicles were registered at more than 100 decibels, and that's actually loud enough to cause permanent and profound hearing damage. I also want to address any concerns about privacy. The cameras are positioned in a way only to pick up and record sounds that occur on the roadway, not adjacent sidewalks or properties. The system also continuously deletes video footage and sound recordings in near real time if there is no triggering event. I've also spoken with the leading technology vendor and the head of New York City's noise camera program and asked them about human conversations being inadvertently recorded. I know that was an issue that came up in last year's hearing. Both entities told me that they've never heard a conversation recorded by a noise camera in the thousands upon thousands of recordings they've reviewed. So in sum, this is an enabling bill for Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Prince George's counties and municipalities in those counties to use noise cameras. The committee should already have letters of support from the 3 House delegations for these jurisdictions. And you'll hear today that there is local support from Montgomery County, College Park, Gaithersburg, and Rockville. Lastly, this bill did pass the Senate in a different posture last session. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You may have to come in here at 4 o'clock every day. It's your good luck charm. Any questions for the sponsor, Delegate Lehman?
Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Delegate Kerr, for your leadership on this issue. I think I know I get a lot of complaints, a growing number of complaints about noisy vehicles. I'm curious about the decibel level you mentioned in current law, and did you consider changing that as part of this bill?
Yeah, so it's 80 decibels now. It's actually set, that decibel level is set in regulation. We have not codified that 80 decibels. I think that's a question for the committee, if that's the appropriate level. I mean, it's been in place since 1988. From the feedback that I've heard from law enforcement agencies and from others, I don't think it's necessarily the level that we're at that's the problem. It's just like nobody can measure it well. And that's where the noise cameras would come in.
Okay, and so the second part of that question, Mr. Chair, if I might, is that if we leave that number alone, and this is enabling legislation, can the counties change that number for each individual county? Can they review that and say, we think that's too high?
They would not be able to go quieter than that. The sponsor amendment I've submitted to the committee would actually set it at 85. So a local jurisdiction could say, you know what, we want to give even more of a window of leeway, and we will only want to ticket at, say, 90 decibels. They could go higher, but that was the state regulations set the floor.
Okay, so they could go higher with the overall decibel number, but what about that range? Like you said, your bill specifies 5 and over. Could they also look at that, or no, they'd have to stick with that?
With the way we drafted the amendment, there isn't flexibility there, but again, I would yield to the committee's will on that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Ziegler.
So am I correct that it's already illegal to alter a vehicle in such a way that it makes excess noise? And if so, if that's true, is there such a thing as a vehicle that is legal that might violate this noise level?
Yeah, thank you for those questions. And you are exactly right. It is already illegal to modify your muffler or engine to be louder than 80 decibels. I will point out in the one piece of opposition testimony, they mentioned a couple of vehicles that are supposedly on the market that are higher than 80. Overnight, my office, we looked into this to try to figure out what exactly was going on there. Apparently with some very high-end vehicles, very expensive vehicles, they are sold in a way so that the muffler where the driver basically can flip a switch. So there is a kind of a legal standard. So the vehicle can be on the market. It meets the federal regulations. It can be legally sold in the United States, but the driver then could flip this switch, make their engine or muffler much louder. And depending on what state they are in, then not be in compliance with the law.
Thank you.
Delegate Terrassa.
Just waiting for, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for bringing this bill. I think you're addressing a real concern that I agree with you on. As we discussed last year, I have some concerns about the privacy issue. And if you could just help me or remind me how we know it's being deleted and whether it being deleted is required in the legislation.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. The bill doesn't speak to it specifically. This is just based off of my conversations with the leading noise camera vendor. So they happen to be the entity that is supplying cameras in New York City and in all the communities in England. There are other vendors on the market for the record. But what they've told me is that their system is set up so that it just automatically, deletes a few seconds later if there isn't any, triggering event that would need to be reviewed. I would have no objections to including that in the bill to say that only a system like that could be used. Yeah.
Right, because that would be my worry. One could worry, I guess. I'm not sure how to, this is going to be a question. Basically, if it's written this way without any other restrictions, a county or others could allow for a different technology that might record more.
Right. Again, I would view that as a friendly amendment to have some clarity on that.
Thank you so much.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this works in the real world. If you have two-lane highway, two cars next to each other, you've got a vehicle like you just spoke about that's flipped into race mode, that's making a lot of noise, and you've got another vehicle driving right next to it. So how does the camera know in that situation what the culprit vehicle is?
Yeah, so the cameras have to be pointed basically at a particular lane. So when the local government is deciding where to put it, they're going to have to make a decision about which lane, because that is where the audio equipment and the video equipment really is going to be targeted. So you could get a situation of where, like you're saying, where there's a loud vehicle, a quiet vehicle. Let's say they're trained on the lane where the quiet vehicle was. It may not trigger 100% of the time, depending on what noise decibel threshold that louder vehicle is at. But in general, it's going to pick up what the loudest vehicle is. I've seen example videos from other jurisdictions where it's like multi-lane roads. It's very clear from the way that the recordings are done, which vehicle is usually the culprit. As you point out, it often is associated with speed. So, you have some cars moving through the area, and then all of a sudden you hear the kind of the racing engine and the car zips through the screenshot. It's pretty clear which vehicle was at fault there.
Sure, I don't doubt that there would be some clarity, but yeah, there would be probably a legal case to be had there, right? If you go to court, you could say which one is it there that in that situation. My other question is, what's the tolerance when it's in the lane, pointing at a lane? What's the degree of width of tolerance there? Because lanes can be tight on roads. So again, if you have a car or a motorcycle or something that's right next to it, I just don't want to see people go into court incorrectly because taking a day off of work and all that sort of stuff to fight something like this.
Yeah, New York City tested their initial camera out at a variety of locations, everything from one lane in each direction roads to very large highways. They found kind of the sweet spot was a roadway that had 2 or maybe 3 lanes, depending on the speed limit and some other factors. It wasn't that they were getting false positives on the highways. It was just they were less likely to get citations on, like a road with 6 lanes in each direction. And I will just point out that under the bill, a human does have to review every single citation. So, just like with speed cameras and red light cameras, sometimes you see that things might get triggered and it just wasn't correct, but a real person verifying what the software is reporting out helps to prevent those false positives going to court.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate, I certainly know that highway noise is a serious problem. It sounds like the main focus of the proposed program is engine noise. And so I guess I just want to ask,
honking horns, blaring music, I mean, even if it's very loud from a car, those wouldn't be picked up by this program, would they?
No, they would not. I will say New York City is actually looking at expanding to those other kinds of noises because they have, I guess, more laws in the books about not honking. It is actually a different module under the software. So in their case, they could use the same camera, but they literally have to enable something different in the software to allow for that. And I'll say the way that the bill is drafted and because of our underlying regulations, those kinds of noises are not covered.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is going to be under the fiscal summary. The startup cost out of the general fund is going to be $75,000. Why wouldn't the provider have to provide that $75,000?
Yeah, and I think you're referring to the cost of the courts for reprogramming. I guess they've had similar costs when we've allowed for other enabling legislation for local governments to use automated technology. I think there could be some flexibility there. When I saw the fiscal note, honestly, one thought that occurred to me is we could make that the courts reprogramming actually contingent on any local government saying that they want to move ahead with this. I think, again, this would be up to the will of the committee if they wanted to try to charge some of that back to local governments. I'm actually not sure how we handled it with, say, speed cameras, because I think that was an example of where I was not here, but back in the day where I think only one or a couple of counties were allowed to initially use speed cameras, it would have been a similar, startup cost for the courts. I don't know how that was handled back then, but we can look into that.
Yeah, and that's my thoughts. I think any expense incurred with the startup of a program, the provider should be responsible for that. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not see any other questions. I do have one. Did you say the first violation is a warning?
Yes, mandated to be a warning, and anytime a camera would be installed in a new location, the first 15 days only warnings could be issued. Okay. Same with speed. It's the same as speed cameras.
Okay, thank you. We have some in-person favorable testimony. Barry Jackson from the great city of Rockville and Bill George from the Maryland Municipal League.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corman and members of the House Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Barry Jackson, Rockville City Council member, and I thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of the Mayor Council, I want to thank Delegate Kerr for sponsoring this important legislation. The Mayor and Council unanimously support HB 212, which authorizes local governments to install noise monitoring systems on roadways. In recent years, excessive noise from vehicles with illegally modified exhaust has negatively impacted our cities and towns by frightening those on road sidewalks and nearby cars and disturbing residents in the privacy of their homes. We strongly support those provisions of HB 212 for the following reasons. This legislation would help address the ongoing concerns our residents have regarding excessive noise disruptions. HB 212 would broadly expand the capability of the city police to address this public nuisance, as there aren't enough police patrols in the city and Montgomery County to respond to noise violations through traffic enforcement. We saw a dramatic and positive change in driver behavior when speed and red light cameras were installed in Rockville. HB 212 has the potential to have a similar impact by providing an incentive for drivers to comply with laws governing noise violations. Automated noise monitoring systems are a promising new tool that could dramatically reduce noise pollution, excessive noise violations, and restore peace and quiet for those enjoying a walk, a bike ride, or working from home. For these reasons, we urge the committee to provide HB 212 with a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Corman and members of the committee. Bill George with the Maryland Municipal League here in support with amendment on House Bill 212. As has been mentioned by several of the committee members, having heard directly that this is an ongoing problem, our local leaders are hearing the same thing. We talked earlier about roadway safety, and this is a nuisance aspect, but along similar vein. Currently, municipal officers, so police officers are allowed to stop a vehicle for being excessively noisy above the threshold. But it is difficult to track. And of course, staffing shortages are making it difficult to have comprehensive patrol out on public roadways. This provides a more objective option for monitoring and snapping photos of violating cars. It's it's in a similar vein to automated mechanisms where it's a bit of a force multiplier. That term was used earlier today, and I kind of like it. I think it makes sense. It's a way to kind of expand the reach of a police department without actually having additional officers. And one thing that's worth mentioning is that this was modeled after, it sounds like it was modeled after a speed camera law. One thing is that the funds that are collected from the fines are restricted in their use on how they can be then expended by the local government. It is restricted to public safety and pedestrian safety purposes. So this doesn't just necessarily go into the general fund for anything. It's restricted towards public safety and pedestrian safety. Now, the amendment for that MML is proposing, I understand that this is meant to be a bit of a pilot program, and it's the way that it passed out of the Senate last year, and we are not looking to upset the apple cart if that's the will of the committee. But our amendment is to make it back statewide, which was the way the bill was introduced last year. And it's more of a marker in the sand that this isn't just a problem in those 3 counties, but it's a statewide problem.
Any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you both. We appreciate it. We have one virtual favorable witness, Judd Ashman, Mayor of the City of Gaithersburg. Please go ahead, Mayor Ashman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Judd Ashman, Mayor of the City of Gaithersburg, speaking in support of HB 212. I don't have much new to add because I think Council Member Jackson and Bill George did a really good job of summarizing. But I know we've all been jolted and rattled and awakened and annoyed by cars with modified mufflers and other excessively loud vehicles. It seems more and more over the last few years, and not sure if it's a function of the Fast and Furious movies or F1 racing or whatever else, but in my discussions with municipal leaders from across the state, this really has become a pervasive problem. And I want to also underscore the point that Bill just made about this system creating a more objective measure of noise, thereby preventing giving drivers who've received citations some objective measure where they can contest in whatever appeal process or court process there is. So in any event, we see this legislation as a big win-win for everybody, and respectfully request a favorable report on HB 212. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you again, Mayor Ashman. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 212 and all of our bill hearings today. Do we have any subcommittee announcements? Chair Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Motor Vehicles and Transportation Committee will meet at 4:45 on Zoom. Thank you.
Great. And just to remind everybody that we will have a voting session in the committee room after floor tomorrow. So don't run off, run here. We are adjourned. Have a great rest of your afternoon.